IDHS reports and updates. Go ahead, guys.
All right, the variance determinations report, as usual, has been uploaded to the website. Did anybody get a chance to look at that? Have any questions about it? Okay.
State Building Commissioner interpretation. Morning. Bring your water with you.
Okay, we have 8 of these. It's a lot, but that'll bring us up to date on our published ones. Starting with number CED 2022-33, building our fire safety law interpreted as 675 IAC 13.6, 2014 Indiana Building Code, section 714.4.1.2 membrane penetrations, which states penetrations of membranes that are part of a horizontal assembly shall comply with section 714.4.1.1.1 or 714.4.1.1.2. Or floor ceiling assemblies are required to have a fire resistance rating. Recessed fixtures shall be installed such that the required fire resistance shall not be reduced. The section has several exceptions. Numbers 1 through 6 were omitted for lack of relevance to the request. Exception 7 states the ceiling membrane of 1 and 2 hour fire resistance rated horizontal assemblies is permitted to be interrupted with the double wood top plate of a fire resistance rated wall assembly, provided that all penetrating items through the double top plates are protected in accordance with section 714.4.1.1.1 or 714.4.1.1.2. The fire resistance rating of the wall shall not be less than the rating of the horizontal assembly. The issue in this case was whether a vertical assembly consisting of double stud cavities separated by an enclosed and inaccessible airspace of indeterminate size qualifies as a quote wall assembly for the purposes of applying section 714.4.1.2, exception 7 of the 2014 IBC. The interpretation is yes, a vertical assembly consisting of double stud cavities separated by an enclosed and inaccessible airspace of indeterminate size qualifies as a wall assembly for the purposes of applying 714.4.1.2, exception 7 of the 2014 IBC, provided 1, the assembly as a whole meets the fire resistance rating requirements specified in exception 7. 2, the top of the airspace in the assembly is separated from the horizontal assembly above by construction no less fire resistant than the remainder of the ceiling membrane that the wall assembly interrupts. And 3, any penetrations through the barrier between the airspace and the horizontal assembly above meet the requirements of sections 714.4.1.1.1 and 714.4.1.1.2 as applicable. Rationale section states that wall assemblies can take a variety of forms, including double stud configurations in which the stud framed panels are separated by an inaccessible airspace. If the assembly as a whole meets the requirements named in exception 7 of section 714.4.1.2, it is acceptable. Those requirements are: the assembly must carry a fire resistance rating not less than that of the horizontal assembly above it, condition number 1 above, and the top of the assembly must provide adequate separation from the horizontal assembly above it, conditions 2 and 3 above. Regarding the first of these requirements, double stud composite walls assemblies exist that have been tested and listed for specific fire resistance ratings by qualified agencies, and any such listed assembly must be considered acceptable for this use if its fire resistance rating is not less than that of the horizontal assembly above it. If the testing agency's listed assembly shows no required minimum or maximum thickness of the airspace between panels, and it shows no materials lining that airspace, or if the listing identifies material installed in that location as optional, then the size of the airspace is irrelevant and the interior materials are not required. Regarding the second requirement, the code assures protection of the horizontal assembly where interrupted by the wall by virtue of its requirement to protect any penetrations of the double top plate of the wall in accordance with sections 714.4.1.1.1 and 714.4.1.1.2. In the case of a wall assembly with an interior airspace between the stud panels, there is no double 2x dimension lumber top plate at the top of the airspace. Therefore, other protection must be provided in this area. Logic dictates that a ceiling membrane at its top is acceptable if it provides the same or better protection as the ceiling membrane installed outside the confines of the wall assembly. Finally, it must be noted that recently the Commission has granted many variance requests to eliminate the requirement that the interrupting wall assembly have a fire resistance rating equal to or greater than the ceiling membrane it interrupts if the wall assembly is sheathed in Type X gypsum board. This is consistent with the revisions introduced in the 2015 ICC Model Code. In any case in which such a variance has been granted, the only effect on this interpretation is the elimination of the requirement for a fire resistance rating for the wall assembly. There is still no prohibition on a variable sized airspace and no requirement for interior sheathing of that space. Second one is number CEB-2022-39, building or fire safety law interpreted as 675 IAC 14-4.4, 2020 Indiana Residential Code, section N 1102.4.1.1, installation, which states the components of the building thermal envelope as indicated in table N 1102.4.1.1 shall be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and the criteria indicated in table N 1102.4.1.1 as applicable to the method of construction. We provided some excerpts from table N 1102.4.1.1, two of which state cavities within corners and headers of frame walls shall be insulated by completely filling the cavity with a material having a thermal resistance of not less than R3 per inch, and exterior thermal envelope insulation for framed walls shall be installed in substantial contact and in continuous alignment with the air barrier. The issue in this case is whether section N 1102.4.1.1 of the 2020 Indiana Residential Code requires unfaced fiberglass bat insulation to be covered by other materials when installed in basement exterior wall assemblies. The interpretation is that section N 1102.4.1.1 of the 2020 IRC does not require unfaced fiberglass bat insulation to be covered by other materials when installed in basement exterior wall assemblies, unless the insulation manufacturer's written installation instructions require it. Rationale section states section N 1102.4.1.1 of the 2020 IRC names two specific installation criteria for insulation products. The first is that they be installed in accordance with the product manufacturer's instructions. The second is that they be installed according to the criteria indicated in the applicable portion of table N 1102.4.1.1, which lists installation requirements for both air barrier and insulation products in a variety of installation locations and conditions. Since the request focused on insulation products installed at walls, that is the portion of the table considered in this interpretation. The first requirement for the insulation to be installed in accordance with its manufacturer's instructions appears throughout the code in reference to a variety of materials. No conditions are attached to this statement as such, and as such, we must take it literally that for the code to require covering of the insulation manufacturer's written installation instructions must direct the installer to cover the insulation. The covering of the insulation must be unequivocally required by the instructions. Recommendations for covering or conditional statements such as cover the insulation for best practices or cover the insulation to qualify for warranty do not constitute an unequivocal instruction. Without such a direct unconditional instruction to carry out a task, that task is not considered required by the products or the materials installation instructions. The second requirement, the information contained in table N 1102.4.1.1 names two specific tasks when installing wall insulation: that it completely fill the cavities and that the exterior insulation and framed walls be installed in substantial contact and continuous alignment with the wall's air barrier. Neither of these requirements calls for the covering of exposed insulation in the interior. Our third one is number CEB-2022-40, building or fire safety law interpreted as 675 IAC 13-2.6, 2014 Indiana Building Code, section 310.1, residential group R, which states residential group R includes, among others, the use of a building or structure or a portion thereof for sleeping purposes when not classified as an institutional group I. The issue in this case is whether the staff sleeping quarters of an ambulance response company are considered an R occupancy group under section 310.1 of the 2014 Indiana Building Code. The interpretation is yes, the staff sleeping quarters of an ambulance response company are considered an R occupancy group under section 310.1 of the 2014 IBC. The rationale section states section 302.1 of the 2014 IBC states that, quote, where a structure is proposed for a purpose that is not specifically provided for in this code, such structure shall be classified in the group that the proposed occupancy most nearly resembles according to the fire safety and relative hazard involved. Ambulance response companies are not named specifically in Chapter 3 of the 2014 IBC, so we must follow the instructions contained in section 302.1 above and classify them as the occupancy group whose use the ambulance response company most nearly resembles. Its general office and dispatch areas most nearly resemble B occupancies, but sleeping quarters are specifically named in section 310.1 as a qualifying characteristic of an R occupancy group. The interested person in this case maintains, however, that an ambulance response facility most nearly resembles a fire station. Despite the explicit sleeping purposes language of 310.1, the 2014 IBC amends the model code to place fire stations in the B occupancy group, even though most, if not all, such facilities include sleeping quarters for firefighters. Because the two facilities share common characteristics of staffing by emergency responders and the inclusion of on-site sleeping quarters, the interested person suggests the entire ambulance facility should be considered the same B occupancy group as a fire station. To fully consider that argument, we must examine the model code's intent in Chapter 3, the intent of the Indiana Fire Prevention and Building Safety Commission in modifying that chapter, and as quoted above from section 302.1, the fire safety and relative hazard represented by the proposed use. The intent of the model code is illustrated in ICC's 2012 International Building Code Commentary publication. This is important because even though ICC commentary is not enforceable as building law, it demonstrates that its authors understood the multiple functions found in fire stations and expected them to be classified as mixed-use facilities accordingly. The relevant portion of the commentary is found in section 304.1, Business Group B, and is shown here, stating, fire stations will be a mix of offices, parking, and maintenance facilities for the fire engines and living spaces for the firefighters. Often a meeting room that is open to the public is also included. This type of facility is a mix of group A, B, R, and S occupancies. The commission amended Chapter 3 by naming fire stations specifically as single-use B occupancies, arguing that to follow the ICC's model of mixed-use fire stations would present a financial hardship for small rural fire companies whose construction budgets may be too small to include the necessary occupancy separations and sprinkler. Fire would be limited in these instances, since the building's own occupants are trained firefighters and they have all the necessary specialized firefighting equipment immediately on site. Further, it's worth noting that since most fire stations are freestanding structures, there are rarely any other contiguous facilities that are subject to the hazard. This last question of potential hazard to both the facility in question and to its neighbors is an important consideration because of the final phrase in section 302.1. That phrase tells us that in addition to the similarity of function and activities in the proposed space, the choice of occupancy group must also take into account the fire safety and relative hazard involved in the proposed use. The occupants of an ambulance response company are not likely to be as prepared to deal with fire as firefighters in training or equipment, and as a result, the lack of the otherwise required sprinkler systems or separation assemblies is a greater hazard here than it is in fire stations. And if the ambulance response company facilities happen to be part of a larger structure that also contains other unseparated tenants, that hazard extends to those spaces as well. In conclusion, it would be an error to believe the considerations that led the commission to classify fire stations as occupancy group B extend to other occupied structures that do not share all the qualifying characteristics of a fire station that help mitigate the hazard of a fire in the facility. In the case of an ambulance response company, the shared characteristics of emergency response staff and sleeping quarters on premises are not enough to warrant a single B occupancy designation. Next one is number CEB-2022-41, Building and Fire Safety Law interpreted as 675 IAC 14-4.4 2020 Indiana Residential Code, Section R106 Construction Documents. R106.1 Alternate Materials, Methods, and Equipment, which states the provisions of this code are not intended to limit the appropriate use of material, appliances, equipment, or methods of design or construction not specifically prescribed by this code. The building official shall determine equivalence of the proposed alternate materials, appliances, equipment, or method of design or construction of that prescribed in this code in suitability, quality, strength, effectiveness, fire resistance, durability, dimensional stability, safety, and sanitation on the basis of evidence or tests as described in R106.2 and R106.3, as suitable to be approved. For Class 1 structures, alternate materials, methods, equipment, and design shall be as required by the General Administrative Rules, 675 IAC 12-6-11. Compliance with specific provisions of the Indiana Building Code or the Indiana Plumbing Code in lieu of the requirements of this code shall be permitted as an alternate. R 106.2 evidence. The building official may require that evidence or proof be submitted to substantiate any claims that may be made regarding the proposed alternate. And finally, R 106.3 tests and standards, which states the determination of equivalence shall be based on design or test methods or approved standards. In addition, the building official may accept as supporting data to assist in this determination duly authenticated reports from the Building Officials and Code Administrators International Incorporated, Southern Building Code Congress International Incorporated, International Conference of Building Officials, the International Code Council Incorporated, or their successors, or acceptance documents from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the certification of a registered architect registered under IC 25-4, or a professional engineer registered under IC 25-31, or the General Administrative Rules, 675 IAC 12. Whenever there is insufficient evidence of compliance with the provisions of this code, or evidence that a material or method does not conform to the requirements of this code, or in order to substantiate claims for alternative materials or methods, the building official shall have the authority to require tests as evidence of compliance to be made at no expense to the jurisdiction. Test methods shall be as specified in this code or by other recognized test standards. Tests shall be performed by an approved agency. Reports of such tests shall be retained by the building official for a period required for retention of public records. The issue in this case was whether under Section R106 of the 2020 Indiana Residential Code, an Indiana registered architect or engineer may be required to design and seal drawings for a Class 2 structure utilizing alternative materials or constructed by alternative methods. Interpretation is yes. Under Section R106 of the 2020 IRC, an Indiana registered architect or engineer may be required to design and seal drawings for a Class 2 structure utilizing alternative materials or constructed by alternative methods if the building official determines such documentation is necessary to demonstrate compliance with the minimum standards of the code. The rationale section states the 2020 IRC clearly allows for the use of alternative materials, methods, and equipment under the provisions of Section R106.1. It is also clear from that section that for such alternative use to occur, it must receive the approval of the building official as a means of ensuring the code's minimum performance and safety standards are met by the proposed alternative use. Since approval is at the discretion of the building official, it's important to understand what is meant by that term. It is included in the definitions provided in the 2020 IRC, and it is as follows. Building official as used in this code shall be the local official or officials as designated in local ordinance, except it shall be the state building commissioner for industrialized building systems under 675 IAC. Since the structure in question is not an industrialized building system, the authority for acceptance of alternative uses in this case lies solely with the local building official. Section R106.2 states that the building official has the authority to require evidence or proof of any performance claims made on behalf of the proposed alternative use. Section R106.3 states that the determination of equivalence must be based on design or test methods or approved standards. To assist in making such determinations, the section provides a variety of evidentiary methods, one of which is certification by an architect or engineer registered under IC 25-4 or IC 25-31, respectively. Those statutes reference registration of the design professional in Indiana through the state's Board of Registration for Architects and Landscape Architects or the state's Board of Registration for Professional Engineers. Drawings certified by design professionals under other jurisdictions' laws do not qualify. Taken in whole, Section R106 provides for the allowance of alternative uses, vests the local building official with the authority to accept or deny the proposed alternative use, as well as the authority to require evidence of equivalent performance, and grants the local building official discretion in determining what tests or other methods are necessary to provide such evidence of equivalent performance.
Yeah, the link for that one is takes you to the wrong
Oh, okay.
interpretation, so we don't have a copy of that. Okay.
Next one, CEB 2022-45, building or fire safety law interpreted 675 IAC 14-4.4, 2020 Indiana Residential Code, section 1505.2, recirculation of air. which states exhaust air from bathrooms and toilet rooms shall not be recirculated within a residence or circulated to another dwelling unit and shall be exhausted directly to the outdoors. Exhaust air from bathrooms, toilet rooms, and kitchens shall not discharge into an attic, crawl space, or other areas inside the building. This section shall not prohibit the installation of ductless range hoods in accordance with the exception to M 1503.3. The issue was whether section M 1505.2 of the 2020 Indiana Residential Code prohibits bathroom and toilet room exhaust ducts from being connected to other exhaust ducts prior to discharge outdoors. The interpretation is no. Section M 1505.2 of the 2020 IRC does not prohibit bathroom and toilet room exhaust ducts from being connected to other exhaust ducts unit, and it is designed to prevent backdrafts. Rationale section states the dispute in this instance is over the intended meaning of the phrase directly to the outdoors and whether it prohibits a design which collects branch exhaust ducts from multiple rooms for connection to a common trunk duct before reaching a single point discharge to the atmosphere. The text of the section provides three distinct prohibitions on the discharge of bath and toilet exhaust air. It cannot be recirculated within a residence, it cannot be introduced into another dwelling unit, and it cannot be discharged into an attic, crawl space, or other areas within the building. Many older homes had bathroom exhaust that terminated in the attic or crawl space and depended on pressure differential to migrate contaminated air to the outdoors through passive vents, the system that was problematic. These designs are no longer allowed. The intent of the phrase in question becomes clear if it's considered as it is written, quote, shall be exhausted directly to the outdoors, close quote. It describes the point of discharge, not the layout of the ducts. Further, nothing in the section specifically addresses multiple fan common duct exhaust systems. Because of the prohibition on recirculating contaminated air within the residence, such systems must be designed to prevent unintentional travel of contaminated air into one of the other rooms that share the system, something typically done through the deployment of backdraft dampers. Although it is commonly understood that such backdraft protection devices are often less than totally effective, ICC commentary confirms that it is not the intent of the section to prohibit such systems within single dwelling units. See 2018 International Residential Code and Commentary, section M 1505.2. We're getting close. Closer. The next one, number CEB-2022-46. The building or fire safety law interpreted as 675 IAC 13-2.6, 2014 Indiana Building Code, section 1027.5, access to a public way, which states the exit discharge shall provide a direct and unobstructed access to a public way. And then it goes on to list an exception. Where access to a public way cannot be provided, a safe dispersal area shall be provided where all of the following are met. 1, the area shall be of a size to accommodate at least 5 square feet for each person. 2, the area shall be located on the same lot at least 50 feet away from the building requiring egress. 3, the area shall be permanently maintained and identified as a safe dispersal area. 4, the area shall be provided with a safe and unobstructed path of travel from the building. The issue was whether section 1027.5 of the 2014 Indiana Building Code prohibits an exterior door from being considered part of a compliant means of egress if its discharge does not provide a direct and unobstructed access to a public way. We have a footnote on this one that notes that the request and therefore the interpretation focuses specifically on means of egress that are not considered accessible. Accessible means of egress are regulated elsewhere in the code. The interpretation is no. Section 1027.5 of the 2014 IBC does not prohibit an exterior door from being considered part of a compliant means of egress if its discharge does not provide a direct and unobstructed access to a public way, provided the exit discharge in question is designed and constructed in accordance with all the conditions named in the section's stated exception. The rationale section states exit discharge is one of the 3 components of a means of egress system. In the order an evacuating occupant employs the system, those component parts are the exit access, the exit, and the exit discharge. One of the requirements for an exit discharge is direct and unobstructed access to a public way. The presence of an exception in section 1027.5 is evidence the authors of the code understood there may be times when it's not possible for an exit discharge to provide evacuated occupants with a direct and unobstructed access to a public way, and that such a scenario should not automatically disqualify the exit discharge and therefore the means of egress of which it is a part from compliance. To qualify for that exception, the code requires a safe dispersal area to be provided for evacuated occupants, and it names 4 specific conditions that dispersal area must meet before the requirement for direct and unobstructed access to the public way can be waived. They are: 1, the dispersal area can be no smaller than 5 square feet per occupant. 2, the dispersal area must be on the same lot as the building being exited, and it may be located no closer than 50 feet from the building. 3, the dispersal area must be identified and permanently maintained as a safe dispersal area. It may be put to no other use, such as parking, temporary structures, etc. And 4, there must be a safe and unobstructed path of travel to the dispersal area from the building. If all of these conditions are met, the exit discharge is not required to provide direct and unobstructed access to a public way while still remaining a compliant component of a compliant means of egress. Failure to meet any of these conditions results in an exit discharge that is non-compliant, which in turn makes non-compliant the means of egress of which that exit discharge is a component part. The next is CEB 2022-47, the building or fire safety law interpreted as 675 IAC 13-2.6, 2014 Indiana Building Code, section 1103.1, where required, which states sites, buildings, structures, facilities, elements, and spaces, temporary or permanent, shall be accessible to persons with physical disabilities. The issue in this case is whether section 1103.1 of the 2014 Indiana Building Code requires a built-in automated device that serves as an interaction point with customers of a business to comply with the accessibility requirements of Chapter 11, including the accessible reach requirements of the ICC ANSI A117.1-2009 standard. The interpretation is yes, section 1103.1 of the 2014 IBC does require a built-in automated device that serves as an interaction point with customers of a business to comply with the accessibility requirements of Chapter 11, including the accessible reach requirements of ICC ANSI A117.1-2009 standard, if that automated device serves as the sole point of customer business interaction. The rationale section states, the purpose of the code's accessibility regulations is to provide equal access to a building and its functions for all the building's occupants. In pursuit of that goal, the code's basic stance is to require total accessibility and then name specific circumstances in which the requirement is waived. This is reflected in the ICC's 2012 International Building Code and commentary and the general comments that serve as an introduction to Chapter 11. It states, the fundamental philosophy of the code on the subject of accessibility is that everything is required to be accessible. This is reflected in the basic applicability requirement, see section 1103.1. The code's scoping requirements then address the conditions under which accessibility is not required in terms of exceptions to this general mandate. This point is further reinforced in the same publication's comments specific to section 1103.1, which state, this section establishes the broad principle that all buildings, structures, and their associated sites and facilities are required to be accessible to persons with physical disabilities. This would include anyone who utilizes a space, including occupants, employees, students, spectators, participants, and visitors. The approach taken by the code on the subject of accessibility is to require all construction to be accessible and then provide for the acceptable level of inaccessibility that is reasonable and logical. While the code assumes and proceeds from this everything must be accessible stance, it is important to understand the limits of the code's applicability in general. Aside from certain site requirements, its jurisdictional influence is typically limited to the building and its permanently constructed features and elements. Unless they are specifically addressed, loose furnishings and appliances are usually beyond the regulatory bounds of the building codes. The locations of the operating controls on a freestanding vending machine, for example, may be subject to other accessibility laws and regulations, but there is nothing in Chapter 11 of the IBC that governs them. In the situation central to this interpretation request, automated devices have been provided in a customer lobby for unattended drop-off and retrieval of clothing at a dry cleaning establishment. From the information provided, it appears that the two devices, one for leaving clothing for cleaning and one for retrieving it after cleaning, are built into the wall separating this automated customer lobby from the non-public part of the cleaner's facility. It also appears from the provided information that this is the sole means of customer service at this facility. Two defining characteristics of the installation drive the requirement for these devices to be accessible. The first is that they are built into the structure. Because these devices are not freestanding pieces of equipment, they are more than a loose appliance or furnishing. In being part of the wall construction, they are a fixed element of the building design and construction, and as such, they fall within the regulatory reach of the IBC's accessibility scoping section 1103, as that section requires accessibility for all elements and in a broader sense for all facilities. The second defining characteristic is that from the provided project information, it appears that no other accessible means of customer business interaction is provided. If the devices are the only means of interaction for the customer, they must be accessible, which means the user operated controls must fall within the range prescribed by the ICC ANSI A117.1-2009 standard. Otherwise, the goal of equal access for all customers is not been achieved. And our last one, number CEB-2022-52, building our fire safety law interpreted as 675 IAC 22-2.5, 2014 Indiana Fire Code Table T5003.1.1, parentheses 1, maximum allowable quantity per control area of hazardous materials posing a physical hazard. We've excerpted tabular data from that table, which describes maximum allowable storage in liquid gallons of Class 2 combustible liquid diesel fuel at 120 gallons, and the maximum allowable storage in liquid gallons of Class 1B flammable liquid gasoline at 120 gallons. Table footnote P says that the following shall not be included in determining the maximum allowable quantities. 1, liquid or gaseous fuel and fuel tanks on vehicles. 2, liquid or gaseous fuel and fuel tanks on motorized equipment operated in accordance with this code. 3, gaseous fuels and piping systems and fixed appliances regulated by the International Fire Code, or excuse me, International Fuel Gas Code. And 4, liquid fuels and piping systems and fixed appliances regulated by the International Mechanical Code. The issue in this case is whether gasoline or diesel fuel contained in the fuel tanks of vehicles inside a structure is counted against the maximum hazardous material quantities allowed by Table 5003.1.1 parentheses 1 of the 2014 Indiana Fire Code. The interpretation is no, gasoline or diesel fuel contained in the fuel tanks of vehicles inside a structure is not counted against the maximum hazardous material quantities allowed by Table 5003.1.1 parentheses 1 of the 2014 IFC. Rationale section states Table 5003.1.1 parentheses 1 of the 2014 IFC provides limits on the allowable storage of hazardous materials within a controlled area of a building before that building's occupancy classification in whole or in part must be considered one of the H subgroups, irrespective of its otherwise use-derived occupancy classification. The table has multiple entries for various types of hazardous material, among them Class 1B flammable liquids and Class 2 combustible liquids, representing respectively the gasoline and diesel fuel that are used in the majority of motor vehicles. It places the allowable limit of those materials at 120 gallons. The table includes a variety of footnotes, some applicable to individual table entries, some to individual material types, and some that apply generally to the entire table. One of that last group is footnote P, which explicitly states the liquid or gaseous fuel contained in the fuel tanks of vehicles that are inside the building does not contribute to the maximum allowable quantity of those materials. IFC commentary reinforces this point, saying, note P clarifies that vehicles with closed fuel systems should be treated no differently than machinery or equipment when applying the provisions of the table. The fuel contained within the fuel tanks of vehicles or motorized equipment is not to be considered when calculating the aggregate quantity of hazardous materials within a control area of a building. For example, when evaluating a parking garage with several hundred cars parked inside, the capacity of their fuel tanks is not counted. Note that the table's limits are absolute and are not conditioned upon the size of the vehicle, the length of its storage period, or the nature of or reason for its presence in the structure. Any questions or comments? We'll check on that link. I don't know if it's ours or the LSA's.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We'll still get it corrected though for the public, right, Daz?
Yeah, I got it updated in the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, rulemaking updates.
All right, so just as a general reminder for the public, any proposed changes to the fuel gas code, which are hearing next month, are going to be by 4:30 p.m. today. Late submissions are not accepted. I got your email the other day about the May meeting. The 5th is available if you need to move it.
We're gonna talk about that now or at the end of the meeting.
I would do it now, honestly.
Yes. Fair enough. Good point. Hold on, Ryan. Hold on. Whoa, Billy. The main meeting, our main meeting is currently scheduled for May 3rd, which is a Wednesday. The reason being the 2nd is primary election day, which is a state holiday, I believe. Yeah. Oh, I know it's a city holiday. I didn't know if it was state. So we'd originally moved that to the 3rd. I really want to be in attendance, but I'm going to be at a conference in Tampa with the International Code Council that week. So this room, correct?
Yeah.
Is available on Friday, May 5th. Are you guys agreeable to moving that meeting from the 3rd to the 5th? I know Scott's agreeable to it because he doesn't want to have to run this show.
Which code are we considering? And again,
Building code.
no, I mean.
I really like to,
Maybe it'll keep attendance down.
well, yeah, I mean, it's a Friday and it's Cinco de Mayo, so people will be celebrating the victory at the Battle of Puebla.
Well, we'll probably never get through the whole building code.
And I'd be very surprised if we do, and we can put a hard stop on it at a reasonable hour as well, so. This isn't a 7:30 PM marathon like some of our former commission meetings. Everybody's good with the 5th? I greatly appreciate
Do
that.
the invite on the calendar, so I know,
Stop.
We will do a hard stop.
4 p.m. or you're by it. So
4 p.m. Is that fair?
Let's go.
I would say that I'm okay with the hard stop at 4 unless we're still going over variances. As long as we're done with our normal commission business, I'm fine with stopping code change proposals at 4 p.m. Eastern. Good.
It requires a motion since the calendar was adopted by the commission.
To reassign the May meeting to May 5th.
Second.
So we have a motion second to reschedule the meeting from May 3rd to May 5th. And the public can know that we'll be done by 4 o'clock, so long as all commission business, other than code change proposals, is completed by that time. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. I appreciate it. Am I?
Sorry, a quick question.
I'm still-
So are all of the meetings this year at this facility?
That is my intention. I would like to keep them all at this facility, just help people's memories know where to go. That being said, I believe next month we will be in this building, but in a different, but not in this room. We'll be in a different room because of a conflict with the space, but
Okay.
we're trying to get this room. Do we know if we have for the rest of the year other than next month?
She hasn't informed me that there's any other conflicts. I did ask her this morning about the May meeting. She said it was available. So, I mean, I'm assuming if there were other conflicts, I would have heard, but I will double check.
Okay, so yes, we will be in this building.
We eat here is the grease.
Okay. Before we jump into variances, do we need a break or do we want to take care of tables first? All right, let's do table variances. Honorable mixed use A, Indianapolis.
Which one is this?
This is the apartment garage.
And I will be recusing myself, so.
Used.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Come get me.
Ralph Gertis Consultants. This project, as noted, it was a mixed-use project. There was an existing parking garage. We're going to build some apartments. And originally, we had a high school associated with the project. The variance deals with a property line. We were going to build part of the project on the south property and part of the project on the north property across the property line. We did not want to put up a 3-hour party wall. The commission requested that the owner come up with a deed restriction prohibiting the sale of either property separately. Since then, the high school has dropped out of the project. The interior development costs were too expensive, so they dropped out. So all and I think the commission had a concern about the high school having an exit through the existing parking garage. So that's gone away. So now what we got is apartments in the parking garage. Both properties are owned by the same owner. The entire facility is going to be fully sprinklered per NFPA 13, including the existing parking garage. We are putting a 1-hour occupancy separation between the parking garage and the apartments. And there have been numerous variances on property lines before. So with that, we ask you to approve the variance without having to produce a deed restriction.
We have updated plans that show what's happening on each side of this property line.
I failed to do that. On the south side, we have an existing 3-story parking garage, and we're putting 2 levels of apartments above that. On the north property, we're putting 5 stories of apartments. And on floors 4 and 5, obviously the corridors go through, everything connects together for the apartments.
This is the probable parking garage, right?
Yes.
So.
Well,
Okay, so you flip flop north and south. The 5 stories will be on the south side. I'd say on the north side, you got Westfield Avenue.
Right, that's what I was looking at.
Okay,
maybe I got north-south mixed up.
as long as the contractor knows.
Ever since I moved into town, I get east and west mixed up, but
In your hands.
So there were issues with exiting before from that 5-story building, that it had to go through the parking garage.
no,
Have those been resolved now?
yeah.
Yeah, because that was our concern was you have the high school exiting through the parking garage and pickup for like parents and whatnot. They were gonna have to line up with their cars in the parking garage in order at the end of the school day. And that was a lot of our concern was you're going into another building to exit
And that concern's gone away.
Correct. Yeah.
Didn't we already act on some of these variances? Are we?
Yes, all we have left is A.
Just A.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion second to approve variance A. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. Like to tie, Ralph.
I can't see that.
Next variance 22-10-28 Ruby's Little Red Barn Woodburn.
Melissa Tupper, RTM Consultants. We'd like to table this for 1 more month, please.
Okay, well,
We still need them to table. it.
yeah, well, I appreciate that, Melissa, and we need to grab 2 commissioners who had stepped out, so just give us
Okay.
1 moment. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's always put the webcams. You know, you can either be centered on camera or you can see your monitor something.
I know. It's funny.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to table 22-10-28. Second.
All right, we have a motion and second to table. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Is that for, oh, I was at request, okay.
Yeah, no, that was the proponent requested to table. Next, 22-12-33 Red Bicycle Hall, Madison. Is there anyone here for 22-12-33 Red Bicycle Hall in Madison?
How many times has this been
It's
said?
gonna be 3.
3?
Yeah, so it was tabled at the December meeting and at the January meeting.
Would they ever show?
They've not shown up.
What's the issue?
They don't want a sprinkler based on historical and hardship. Still like to talk to them.
Give them 3 strikes and next month we
That's fine.
Yeah, that's not something I want to do without them, and
move the
how
table.
long do we go with? I mean, I assume you've tried to, and they've been non-responsive.
Second.
All right, motion is second to table. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Didn't we at some point decide we were only gonna go a certain number of months and then kill
We're gonna give
it?
them three.
Three, is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's national pastime. 22-12-41, the Trojan Horse Bloomington. Nice jacket, sir.
Good morning, Derek Holman, RTM Consultants. This is the Trojan Horse Restaurant in Bloomington. Just to kind of refresh your memory, it was cited by the Bloomington Fire Department for not having a type 1 hood system over a range that is in their basement. It's separate from their main kitchen. It's on the main floor. This is a range that they use for baking and making soups and hard-boiled eggs and things of such in their prep kitchen area. The main cooking, everything is done on the first floor where they have a type 1 hood system, fryers and all that stuff in their main kitchen. So we've taken some more time to look at this project over the last couple months now. And we've submitted some new documents on the website. It'll be under the Trojan Horse Statement document. And kind of a couple of points that we're going to point out now. The range in question, it was questioned if it was gas or electric. We have confirmed it is an all-electric range. We have confirmation from Vulcan. The model of the range is an E36, which stands for an electric 36-inch wide range. No, it's not gas, no open burners or anything like that. A hot top electric range and electric oven. It has been in place and in use prior to 1986. In fact, it's been in use prior to 1982. That's from a statement from the previous owner, which is now a notarized statement from the previous owner that has been submitted as well. Has been in use since before January of 1982 in the basement, and it's been in use since and has never been cited by any jurisdiction since he was the owner. Since 1974, I believe, is when he was the owner. Also, statement number 2 on the sheet, the 2014 Indiana Fire Code as cited from the Bloomington Fire Department. They cited section 609.2, which is amended out and deleted and says, see the Indiana Mechanical Code. And the Indiana Mechanical Code would not be applicable to this because it's an existing range. So there is no code that would require a type 1 hood to be put over an existing range in this building. 675 AC 1249 states that buildings and structures and all their associated systems are to be maintained in conformance with the rules that they were built under. So, all right. A little weird hearing myself talk. And also in 1984, during the 103rd Indiana General Assembly, PL number 8, which was the actual legislation that created the Fire Prevention and Building Safety Commission, had a section in there, section 130, that stated any code that was in effect prior to July 1st, 1984, which were the codes in effect prior to the Fire Prevention and Building Safety Commission, could not be enforced after June 30th, 1986. They gave a 2-year period from the adoption or the creation of Fire Prevention and Building Safety Commission to basically bring any non-complying issue of previous codes into compliance in that 2-year period. But once July 1st, 1986 came and passed, they could no longer be enforced. So basically, if there's not a code, there's a violation when it was built before 1986, it could not be enforced after July 1st, 1986. So really, upon further review of this is no violation under the fire code, under the GAR, or under the mechanical code, because there is no code that could be enforced to require them to bring an existing issue prior to 1986 into compliance with fire code and mechanical code requirements currently.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems NVR would be the most appropriate.
Yeah.
Because we're outside of our jurisdiction to grant a variance. This would have been under the Administrative Building Council.
This was legislation passed by the General Assembly.
Oh, I know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm saying the previous, our predecessor
Correct.
body would have
And the
had.
building council and fire. commission. Yeah, correct.
Make a motion with no variance required.
Yeah. That's a good question. That's a good question. What, was it moved or is it always been
It's always been in the basement and in use in the basement.
in the same location?
They moved it at one point when they redid the floors and it's been in the basement since it was installed.
They put it in the same spot or?
I don't know that I honestly don't know
A
that.
letter from the original owner just said that it was moved when they changed the flooring. And that at that point is when they installed the stainless steel as well.
There's stainless steel on the walls around it now. Wasn't originally.
I believe Monroe County Building Department. This isn't something that we cited, but I do have a question about this. Does this mean that it's okay for this particular range to be here? Or does this mean that when they replace this range, it should comply with the current?
It is. If there were taxes, those.
So your thought is, as long as the current range can be maintained, it can be fine, but when it gets to end of life and has to be removed, you can't put a new one in. So
It's a good question, because
But it's the furnace or a toilet or anything else, as long as it's the same BTU output, same device, and all you're doing is unplugging it and putting another one in its place, I think you can.
With electric.
With electric. If the device changes, or it gets bigger, or it.
That's what I'm talking about. You're not gonna find the exact same thing, so. You're talking time for time. Yeah. So.
well, but in the same way, you know, if you think about this in terms of a window being replaced, a lot of times we allow like for like, as long as we're not changing the opening, reducing egress, but it's not a 100-year-old leaded glass window. It's now triple pane and whatnot. So it's like for like in its use, but not the actual.
I would say if the appliance type doesn't change materially. The water heater table is kind of wrong. If you're changing out an electric water heater from an electric water heater, the appliance is the appliance. It's whether one's a 40 gallon, one's a 50 gallon water heater, as long as the input of water and electric is the same, you're changing an appliance.
well, what does the code say about moving the thing? I mean, changing its location? At what point does that then become, I mean, if they move it into the kitchen, does it still not need a hood?
It depends when it's moved too, because it's before a jurisdiction.
If they do it today, we're letting them replace it today without doing anything. How far do you have to move it before you have to do something?
Obviously, it's their operations, so they decided to go do something more than boil eggs down there. If they decide, hey, we're gonna start doing our bacon down here, then we have to change it. Right. I was only thinking about our part, so if the fire protection system goes out and can't get any parts from it. Now you have to update it, if you have to update it, break it up and send the plans to, yeah. It's the state to get, use fire alarm system today because you can't usually open it. So if you got a system that's building 1974. You can only find parts, you have to update everything, that's what I was.
I mean, I think that this is a GIR. I mean, it's not,
It's more.
it's the GIR.
If it's a furnace, you can't find the same furnace you had back then. But if they were to change out from electric to gas.
Right, if they change the fuel, it's with the bulk. I don't know that we have the exact answer because it's gonna depend on what they try to do.
Apologize, I was 8 when the law was. So,
Oh, good. So I wasn't born.
So,
yeah.
There got to be stipulations that are to say. Well, I guess if there's no variance required, then nothing we can do stipulate to say that they have to maintain.
Yeah, we can't necessarily put a condition on an NVR.
Yeah, exactly. But
But for our purposes, we need to know, I mean, if this stays an electric range or is replaced as an electric range in its location, we're good to go. If they move the appliance or change the fuel source, at that.
Presumably, if they're moving the appliance, they're probably also moving the appliance connection, which then they have to relocate the outlet to attach the range, then it becomes a reviewable.
Because that heat source is only part of what a hood is protecting against, right? It's also the things that the stove is producing when it is adding heat to food.
They change what they're doing. You know, you just gotta be quite assumption. I mean, we've found that older people have told us, but then I'm not saying that's what's happening. It's just, you know, we've been told that, hey, really, you know, warm the buns on here and warm some stuff up, and then we've gone in and they're grilling burgers.
Yeah.
The whole point of this NBR and the record of our conversation is, it's based on their testimony that they are not producing grease-laden vapors.
Not really.
Well,
It's based on the fact that this is free.
It's out of our jurisdiction. Yeah, their testimony before was that.
Right, but I don't think it has anything to do with anything now. They can produce as much grease as they want because we don't, I mean.
On that unit right now.
Replace it, none of these statements apply, because a new one, all these statements are based on the original.
The age, originality.
So whatever new appliance they put in its place would eat whatever new foods required.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm enthusiastic about it. I'm just saying it seems to be the rules are what the rules are.
True.
And what we were saying other times, I don't know that that statement's accurate. You know, if you've had an electric stove in a location for 40 years, that stove goes out, to now say, well, you can't replace that electric stove with the new electric stove because, sorry, the code doesn't allow it to be there now without a hood.
I'm curious about something. Let's say you have non-safety glass in place where safety glass is required, but it's pre the requirement of that. If you break that glass, you have to put in safety glass.
Well, and I get that, things change, it's just
I
like.
mean, it's a great philosophical discussion that we can have to make glass drinks.
I think that's the key. I mean, right now they're using that range and they're not replacing that range. They don't have any plans to replace that range.
And I'd say when the range dies and they replace it, Mr. Fire Marshal Clapp wants to cite something and bring it here, then we can have that discussion, but I don't know that we want to really delve too deep into a hypothetical at this time.
And I'm sure both of you will do plenty of research to defend your side if that happens.
Yes. So where we stand now, we have a motion and a second to NBR. Anybody else have any comment that they'd like to make? All right, so we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Is there any way we can lower the blinds back here or something?
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
Killing us here.
Such a bad.
22-12-44, Transformer 1, Scottsburg. Thank you. That's good. Is there anyone here for 22-12-44, Transformer 1 in Scottsburg? Take it twice.
Table one more time, I'll move to table.
Thank you. Motion and second to table, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. 22-12-47, pass fire inspection with variance, Fort Wayne. Anyone present for 22-12-47, pass fire inspection with variance in Fort Wayne?
Move to table.
Motion and a second on table, all in favor signify with aye. Both same sign. Motion carries. Those are the seconds. This is,
Next month, we'll be doing one.
yeah, this was the third table of it. So. 22-12-81 Fastenal, Indianapolis.
I figured out.
Yes, this is Josh Westerfield with Effie Moran. I'm here
And
with
Mark
Mark
Rippey.
Rippey.
How are you all doing today? The variance request was to allow a hose station to come off of a fire sprinkler system above it. There was a lot of conversation last month and they asked that we go meet with the fire department to explain the variance and get their opinion. We met with Jonathan Kempler on the 9th of January, and I think he wrote a comment to withdraw their opposition to the variance. They understand what's going on now and they don't have a problem with it. I'm not sure if Jonathan's in the room or not, but he may want to add his comments.
He's not here, Mark, but we do have his written comments from the 10th of January stating that the Pike Township Fire Department is withdrawing its opposition to the proposed variance.
Right, and I believe last time during the discussion, there was a proposal to approve the variance and it was seconded and they asked that we table it till we met with them and that's what we've done. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Anybody have any questions?
I vote to approve.
I seem to recall our biggest concern was that LFO is opposed to it and they've removed that opposition.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion a second to approve. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I don't know. Daz, the Yamaha speaker up here is flashing orange, but I also know that I don't have any power either. So I don't know if it got turned off or if we popped a circuit.
Yeah, well, it's not sure to do that. Yeah, it's this,
Yeah. We flipped the switch maybe. So
That sounds lit up. That one.
Where's that thing plugged in at?
it's back on the back wall.
Is there?
Yeah, you turn this on. It might be the battery driving. So. Yeah.
That thing.
Jim's got it.
Someone.
Yep, that just turned it on.
Got it. We got power.
It's like you need a two.
Fair enough.
I think it was cutting out on the gentleman. You start flashing.
All right, so the other two green, I think they should be good.
Yeah.
You want an exercise.
Yeah.
Get steps.
And 22-12-83 RH Indianapolis and Indianapolis.
Ralph Curtis Consultants. Attending virtually is Dan Pierce, the architect with NOR. And there are some others from NOR and possibly the ownership attending virtually. With this, I'll let Dan take the lead. Dan, are you on?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So last month we discussed our building, our plan, our Chapter 2034 review, and we were requested to come back this month and present some additional information, update some files, and we are back. Ralph did adjust the documents that we previously requested to do so. And I suppose I'll open it up to you guys to see if you have any questions before I dive into anything.
Just to clarify, did we approve any of these three last month?
No, they're all tabled.
Okay.
I think the one other question we had last month was the cost to change out the door swings. They're currently swinging in to out, swinging doors for egress.
That looks pretty expensive.
Yes, we did provide the cost implication analysis. It was one of the attachments. So I can pull it up on my screen if you guys want to look at it now.
I found it.
Did changing the building to a type 5 affect the scoring on the chapter 34?
Yeah, originally, my third variance request was to request, I don't know, like something like 38 points or something. I went back and rescored it as a wood frame building. We now need 51 points in order to pass the chapter 34 analysis.
What do you have in the attic in the way of alarms, smoke detection, that kind of stuff?
Right now, nothing.
And that's the place where you have genuinely exposed wood. The wood in the walls is probably all covered with drywall or stucco or something, right?
Yeah, I understand it's LVL wood, which is some kind of laminated wood assembly.
Yeah, laminated veneered lumber.
Yep.
And I mean, it's really high end. This building is really high end construction, so.
Yeah, and our goal was with the modifications and the upgrading of the fire alarm system to provide some additional notification devices in the attic. So that's on our list of things to improve in the residence.
Does that help with the scoring at all?
I've already scored it as a full smoke detection system throughout the building.
My main concern on the drawings was that sheet 101 that, so I could see the loading and stuff. And it looks pretty good. I mean, a good part of the building is 75 PSF, which isn't the 100 you normally would have for public use, but it's close enough in my opinion, since the better part of the first floor is 100. Balconies are all 100, the veranda is 125.
Can you remind us again, are you limiting occupancy on the second floor?
We are.
We've got,
We would not only limit occupancy, but we would have posted staff at the top of the stairs to be monitoring it.
Can you remind us what that limit was?
20 people.
What do you call it, 13 or staying on 13D?
The existing building, well, the existing building for the first and second floor is 13D. In the basement, we have 13. Yeah.
And based on the hardship cost for not only the time it would take to make the revisions plus the dollar figure, our goal is really to modify less invasive aspects of the building in order to meet our comfort levels for egressing the space. We are happy with the $35,000 potential impact for adjusting door swings. It's the, close to a $1 million price tag and 3 to 4 months of additional construction time, which limits the ability to get our doors open.
I feel like I'm missing something because on the application, it says that the existing 13D system will be upgraded to a 13.
Yeah, I tried to modify that before it got to the commission. My modification didn't take. Yesterday, I did submit some corrections to the variances where it's our intention to retain the 13D, and I talk about the fact we have some combustible wood in the building. I also made a comment that we've got a common path that exit travel on basement first floor of about 180 feet. And I revised the
Click on
chapter 34 to 51 points.
So your revised scoring, that is with the doors swinging in the direction of travel. You're not taking a hit for that.
That doesn't actually get into the scoring. It's a general. When you get to means of egress, there are 5 or 6 features that you automatically have to meet before you even score points. And Indiana has added an amendment saying that if you got assembly, the doors have to swing in the proper direction. So it's not even a scoring issue. It's just something that's required.
It's variance be withdrawn if you are going to swing the doors in the path of egress.
I still need it for common path of travel.
You're only changing the exterior doors
Yeah,
and you have interior doors that,
the interior doors are okay, my understanding.
oh, when you say common path of travel, you need the length.
Yeah. The variance B also addresses our dining room area. We've got a dining room of over 1,500 square feet. And we want to, well, the variance was to limit it to 40 people based on the door swing, but if we change the door swing, population no longer becomes an issue.
So variance B is down to the length of travel and the NFB 15.
Yeah. Assuming we reverse the doors.
We are reversing. I guess I'm just trying to trying to get you, so. So you did send a new one in just saying that you are keeping the 13D grand is for smoke detection system and manual, right?
Yes.
Then you're changing the swing of the doors.
We haven't committed to that, but I think that's something the commission wants to see. The cost difference to swing the doors is probably not worth the argument. I mean, although they did price out 4 locations, and I think last month we were only talking about 2 locations. We only need 2 ways out of the dining room. So they did add some more doors.
That's the main entrance to the space.
The front door and.
Yeah,
and
that
what
is
I'm gonna
correct,
call-
Ralph. I mean, we
Yeah.
we increased the doors that would be swinging in the path of egress in order to have a more favorable analysis.
Right.
Yes.
Can you go into a little detail about the general safety needing 20 points? What's killing you there? Is that just square footage?
Well, on the chapter 34 analysis, I think the big issue is the 13D sprinkler system. We don't get any trade-offs. We don't get any height and area increases for the building. We don't get a corridor trade-off. We don't get the exit travel distance increase for scoring. When it comes to scoring the sprinkler system, we have to score it as deficient and we get negative points. So we're negative points for height and area, negative points for corridor, negative points for the sprinkler system. Maybe that sums it up.
These are way bigger numbers than we're used to seeing. So, you know, at least have it spoken as to how these numbers got so big.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we all realize that this is a unique house, and there probably aren't any other houses like this in the state. If there are, there are very few of them, and so, and then even fewer of them that would ever seek this type of reuse, so.
Yeah. So how do we attack it? All three separate or combo?
We can go either way.
This point, you could do all three together.
Yeah, so if you want to attack all three at once.
I mean, even if you get a fire in one of these wood walls, except at the attic, it's gonna start as non-combustible and end as non-combustible, so.
I think the other thing to keep in mind here for us to get a little bit more comfortable is that the intent here is to have staff with people in the space, and presumably the staff know how to get people out. People aren't
Do you want to make that a condition?
We do have staff strategically placed throughout the building that would be able to assist with any customer questions. I would say that the majority of the customers that are frequenting the space have pre-assigned meeting times. So clients and interior designers have the opportunity to schedule those meetings as they walk through the space. So I think both those aspects is, help to assist that concept.
Once you're granted variance, it goes to the building, not the business, right? And make any of those kind of things,
Right, so.
conditions to the variance.
It's just this business and not the building. Yeah.
Well, I mean, more of the staff thing. I mean, I don't think that's the kind of things we can make a condition or not.
You go to that.
Well, the business, I mean, you're talking about.
He's basically saying that.
We can limit occupancy, right? We can definitely do that.
Occupancy, I mean, then the code in chapter 4, especially new code, require them to do
Under staff.
fire safety evac
That's
plans
something we can do.
and evac drills, at least annually. If not,
The EAP, yeah. I mean, you're more stringent with what you deal with than what OSHA deals with. It's a biggie.
Dan, does the owner have a feel for staff to client ratio?
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. I mean, if you figure gallery staff to gallery patrons, maybe 2 or 3 to 1, three clients versus 1 staff.
So, yeah, I do like that.
I mean, I think this space is going to garner some attention when we first open our doors to the public. That initial excitement is probably going to wear off within the first month, maybe 2, in which case we go back down to traditional numbers where the majority of the occupants are there to meet specifically with their designers.
They agree for fire watch for the first month. Would they agree to a fire watch for the first month? Just to see.
I don't see why not. That's typically just a function of the fire alarm system, correct?
No, they're talking about.
To be an on-duty fire professional there to walk the building and make sure that it's safe.
During business hours.
During business hours.
Sure. I'd have to get that in front of RH. I wouldn't be able to make that decision on the fly. But I don't see that would be, I would see that being a favorable agreement.
you'd have to hire somebody from fire department.
IFD would assign a person. They have a system and.
Yeah, I think that's coordinated through the Indianapolis Fire Department.
Yeah.
This is Kevin Stafford, RH. I would say that as a condition of approval, we would have no problem doing that.
Thanks, Kevin.
I guess the question is just a time period. I mean, is 30 days enough to, obviously, if IFP is seeing an issue at the 30th day, that this is just overwhelming, you guys can come running to us and.
If IFP has some concern, they'll bring it back.
Or we could do an option where it's 30
you
days
good
with
with
an
that?
option to extend another 30.
We're putting on that.
That's the question. Are you,
Yes, I mean, I'm not really thinking that 30 days is gonna be, like, it's gonna just be an old thing after 30 days, because it's home everyone has wanted at least see it one point or another, so.
And he said if it's a condition to approve this, that could go more than 30 days.
I think it just should be 30 days, and then we'll play it
Well, about it.
and it will probably give them some requirements going forward that you have to keep it below this amount or this number.
and it may be that it's just Saturdays and Sundays are bad days and we limit it to those days. and,
Exactly.
You know, so I think the 30 days is the test period with everybody's understanding that the fire watch plan may be modified after that for a period.
Then you guys have a cost in that.
Yes.
I mean, how much you taking your off to be for okay?
And we can explore that with them, with RH, as far as, since this is gonna be such a long duration. They can we can give some of your personnel certified, but it'd have to be under our parameters and through our certification class. And that way it'll allow them to, yeah, and maintain it for longer, so if it's needed longer, then that person has to be designated to just that. So that'll be explained, and if you decide not to go that route, then personnel has to provide.
And what are the hours of the store then for those guys? What are the hours? that they-
Operating hours.
Dan, the operating hours for the facility?
I think it's 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., I believe.
And the restaurant operates at the same hours, roughly?
Yes. Yep.
That's
And
that's
and-
not the fire watch when you're doing it. I mean, I've dealt with fire watches where we've had them going, you know, at somewhere for 2 months. And man, that wears a tear down. And it happens. We got the personnel that have to go in and out there, but we go with us 24/7.
And we'll have those two, but that's the unforeseen. And going into this with a known frame, which makes it easier for us to allow the company to certify individuals. That's that. So you can get with the fire marshal's office for Indianapolis. We can talk.
Where we at on the motion? You gonna,
I would like it, but it got a little complicated for me.
would you like me to swing and you can?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve variants A, B, and C with the following conditions. Number one, the egress doors are switched so that they all swing in the path of egress. Number two, a 30-day fire watch is provided during business hours, coordinated through the Indianapolis Fire Department. And after the 30 days, the program will be evaluated and possibly amended. Do we need additional smoke or fire sensors in the attic?
Didn't you say you had that?
Technically, the standard doesn't require them in the attic, is my understanding. So if you want them in the attic, I think you'd want to make it a condition.
Yeah, that's true. Said,
The third will be protection in the attic for smoke and fire.
I'll second that if we're ready for me.
Anything else?
I got covered.
Yeah, so just make sure I've got that. So condition one, egress doors are all switched to swing into the path of egress. Two, a fire watch is provided for 30 days during business hours.
First of those, as I would suggest, pointing in the direction of egress.
For the fire watch, let's say that any compensation due that the fire department for that watch is to be paid by the owner.
please add that it will be reviewed at 30 days and the condition needs to continue.
Okay, cool. So fire watch provided for 30 days during business hours, with compensation for fire watch due paid by the owner.
Any compensation required for the fire watch is paid by owner. And that after 30 days, it will be evaluated. At the discretion of the Indianapolis Fire Department.
Three, protection in the attic for smoke.
Detection, not protection.
Protection.
Big difference.
Okay.
You want to read it one more time?
Yep. So egress doors are switched to all swing in the direction of egress. Two, a fire watch is provided for 30 days during business hours with any required compensation for fire watch paid by owners, evaluated after 30 days at discretion of IFD. And three, detection in the attic for smoke and fire.
All right,
Yeah.
we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
You said detection in the attic, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
D.
okay, sorry, detection of some. I said aye.
I heard a bunch of ayes, I hear any opposed. All right, motion carries as with conditions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph.
All right, it's 10:38. Let's take a break until 10:50.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I love that you have 3 bugs and they all match.
Yeah.
And they match your shirt.
That was the first thing I asked first day.
I checked on the condition too.
I have 2 green bugs. I don't have 3. I'm jealous.
To be honest, one of them, when I picked one up and then picked up my daughters and then they moved on to the ones, those came back.
Hello.
I had a really big.
Came back with a break.
Cool. Yeah. The same figure. Not a nice call. Thursday.
You know, iced coffee and cold coffee are 2 completely different things. I thought I could make iced coffee just by taking coffee and creamer and putting ice in that. No. They, I think they brew it differently or something.
I'm gonna be attending coordination.
Something fun for us.
No, but
I am not a barista.
And in my opinion, the best is saffron coffee. Right, and that's what the white places, ice coffee as well.
Are they English? What did you say, beans?
Use African.
Oh, okay, African beans.
My first coffee tends to be really earthy, like a motor dragon, waste. Very cool. And it's not very good. It makes a really good ice.
I don't know what Folgers is.
That would take you something. Take your standard coffee in South America.
It's all South America.
See, I've got something that I never got exposed to, but I was gonna try my first batch of a buddy of mine, he's a PhD in psychology, which means.
Who's the guy with the donkey and the coffee?
He does,
Juan Valdez.
Wanda, yeah, that's it, South America.
but I do, Ethiopian Yogurt Chef is one I really like. It's.
Yeah,
That's a really good one. And not drinking, by the way, no.
that's actually what I use mostly. I use like 5 pounds of that, along with a couple pounds.
Yes, it's sitting on, is that sitting? And there's these.
Like I just go, you can tell when it's being brewed. It's like, fresh.
That's my friend. Okay. You're gonna put it back to the level.
Well, they're saying it's.
I mean, we can't go over anything because they're on code. You can't, it's just like approved, you just don't support. Yeah. Or. Doesn't seem to be. Proper response. I haven't thought about that, but you're right. That's, yeah, how about the interesting? Yeah. Okay, I didn't quite think of that. I thought that when you put in your various requests, I reported that I also said they don't take my word for anything. Okay. And I said that once or twice for the fire department. Oh. Yeah, no, I mean, I do support it. I just, I don't, I basically support it. And no variant for fire. For less than what you're paying, not more than. Good. I'll, yeah, that's the other, that's the other, my bank account. I mean, I said the same paperwork. I mean, I wouldn't actually share the. And you saw there like the last time. That's what I told them. So I have to go to the business. So I
Your real job or just for the drivers? So I mean, I said the same paperwork for me too, and I got it.
Is that?
Maybe on my jurisdiction.
And then the weird thing was that I had checked my social security,
Yeah.
and it was only showing. That's what we paid after 25. 23 dollars.
Yeah.
What's Frank?
Local fire department. All sorts of. Yeah.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm just like, I like this.
That's a reason.
Yeah, it is. That's all we're. It's coach. Yeah.
It is nice.
Yeah, that's all you get, but it's sort of drive for me. I'm gonna tell you.
If it's a hot coffee, and that's why, if it's iced coffee, like February 28th, 24th, then you use. Yeah, but it means why I have it. And I made my. My wife's not sure. I need to start. Time you get fired. I was sorry. When I tried cold, I can feel it out. That was my stress. Remember, strategy just lack. I didn't like it.
Well, then I tried it. I tried it and I was at it. Everything. When I started to do that,
Yeah.
I know.
I'm scared of this cross.
And then it's like, and you get. I mean, it was like, whoa, this is not before. They actually tell us.
My wife hates coffee. Everybody hates coffee.
That's the only one, your shop, it's just. Yeah, when you open it up. Yes, that's exactly one of those. That's your guy. No, I have a roast. Yeah, because he was kind of. Don't have a win and you guys. You get a win, he comes in and pulls it off back.
Basically, it's just on everybody's kind of following. I guess it is what it is. What you both got?
My favorite. I've been there. Maybe you walk tomorrow. I'm not like. Yeah, that's kind of burning.
Yeah. My wife's a water. Yeah.
You're like reading.
If it's green, it's good.
Yep. On to new variances. First up is 230131 BW Fusion Logansport. Is there anyone? Fusion Logansport.
Couldn't hear you back there, so.
Sorry, I'm known for my wide, soft voice. Yeah.
We got movement, so.
Christina Collister, RTN Consultants. Okay, and I just got over laryngitis, so I'm gonna do my best. BW Fusion it's a new building and it went through state plan review, or sorry, through the state, and they were going to approve the variance, but they wanted to offer a condition on it. So we did ask that they move it to the hearing. What's going on with this building, and I don't know if you have the floor plan in front of you, like the site plan. I don't have a board anymore. So the building is constructed kind of in 4 phases. This variance is for building A and B, and there's an exterior storage tank area, and there's a building C that's coming. So the plans that were filed were for buildings A and B in the exterior tank farm. And building C, we'll call it, was off in the future. That's been moved up and that's gonna be filed shortly. The facility is an F1, S1, really just an F1, will be an F1, S1 in the future. It's for biostimulants. That's the new kind of fertilizer helper. So to get rid of the nitrogen and phosphorus, we're moving to these biostimulants, which you add to seeds, to plants, to soil, to help limit what you need as far as applying the fertilizers. They're made up of enzymes, proteins, amino acids, and micronutrients, and some other compounds that are mixed in there. So this facility, it's a FBI pre-manufactured building. So it's type 5B construction by design. It's building B, which is independent, is 12,800 square feet. We have building A, which is currently 37,500 square feet. And building C, which is coming to the future, is going to add another 62,500 square feet onto the facility. The problem that we have is we have 2 sections of the code, and that's what the 2 variances are for that require those buildings to be sprinklered. One would be for allowable area, and then one is just for the occupancy classification being over that area to require sprinklers. And we've been here before with some of these fertilizer buildings that we're doing, the FBN, fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, and now same with these fertilizers. Working with the state chemist, and that's the Department of Agriculture kind of for the state of Indiana. These are buildings that we don't necessarily want to put a tremendous amount of sprinkler water on and wash it into the surrounding systems. There's a letter in there from the state chemist. And there's a letter in there from the local Logansport Fire and Building Departments where we met with them and they're aware of what's going on. They have other buildings across the street that are kind of similar that we got variances on. It's a very industrialized area. So the issue here is to not provide the sprinkler system for the building. It'll be 100,000 square feet total when it's done. Allowable area for the F1 is 15,500. We can add the available side yards, but we're still significantly under that as far as what's allowable area in a non-sprinkler building. So, but that's what we're doing here is, if you put water on it, if they did have a fire and it set off the sprinkler, the product is destroyed and becomes a total loss. If we put the water on and the containment area is exceeded, what we require for code, which is the short period of time, and it washes into the system, we're worse off than if we let the building burn. And again, it's in the state chemist letter. It's not what they want to say, that some of these facilities are better to let burn. It's independent, it's sitting on its own site. The fire department's aware of the process and how we approach that, but that's where we are with this one. And like I said, this would be for building A and B, and they'll be coming back rather quickly with building C. So currently it's for the 37,500 square feet. But there is that addition that's going to be going on to that, which expects them to be able to build it. So we just wanted to bring that up to make sure you were aware that hopefully this would be approved for the full site when it's completed.
So it's completely not combustible.
It's been filed as a 5B, but yes, it's an FBI steel building. It's with the steel panels and the steel roof and the.
That's probably by being that.
That's how they filed these buildings. This wasn't our variance originally. We got involved in the project afterwards, but. And it probably has to do with some of the interior partitions on the office spaces. Because if you're not going to build them all the way up to the 24-foot, they're easier to build as the wood stud walls. And really the hazard on this product. This is most of the building is processing. So if you look at the plans, you see all those exterior tanks. So it's mixing tanks. So they bring the product in, they mix it, they package it. So a lot of it is F1. They put it on the dock for immediate removal to the trucks. So there's a storage building in there. It's not high piled storage. Most of this, the reason for the hazard, this isn't a hazardous material like the pesticides and herbicides were. It's the containers that make it combustible. So we can't call it an F2 occupancy because we have the plastic jugs that the material's in. So originally the building was filed as sprinklered and it was through review with the state chemist office that the concerns were raised.
Part of the building gonna be sprinkler?
No.
Or the office space or anything like that?
No, I mean, the office space in itself wouldn't require the sprinklers. It's rather tiny if you see it. And it has direct exits to the exterior.
You guys talking, I know there's a letter in there, but it's from the Cass County Planning Department.
Yeah, they met with the fire department as well. Yes. Yeah.
I'm just wondering what their game, I know what my game's gonna be, but.
Right, and we have, if you remember, we have the facility.
On the street. Yeah.
Well, and we have the facility across the street. The facility across the street was that zinc. You remember that with all those enormous non-sprinkler buildings with the zinc processing facility?
Yeah, I was just looking for something to say that they're, I mean, not just nothing against our city planning is different than the fire department, let's just say. You know, I mean, if I'm looking at a building and they're looking at a building, you know, even their occupancy is different than my occupancy when you're looking at that kind of stuff.
True, but understand smaller fire departments sometimes don't want to be the one to write the letter, taking the responsibility.
That's primarily volunteer probably in that area.
Not Logan's.
No.
Unfortunately, yeah.
No, but it's a growing area, but it's been relatively, they don't have a lot. They have the state facility and some housing, but they didn't have a lot of heavy industry or warehousing. But with 24 going through there now, I think it's growing and changing.
You know, like what, you know, what percentage area of the building will not be like our offices or other areas of the building that.
Yeah, there's a small office plan in there. The office is,
Restricting the amount of non-combustible in the current office area or something.
the office area is this little portion right down there. It's about, looks like it's about 22 by 70 feet. And it's just really like it's restrooms, 2 offices and a break room.
What's the area, the storage of this fertilizer or process?
It's processing, mixing. I have Minda Doring is on the phone from the facility. Minda?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you had any specific questions about, I don't know, were you in the meetings with the fire department?
We had some communication with the fire department. He actually contacted me via email, and I'd have to look to see exactly what his name is, but I can pull it up. But he was asking me questions about, you know, what types of materials and things like that that we would be storing. That was something that, you know, DHS had requested that we work with them and speak with them. So we did walk through that with them.
And this is, when we say fertilizer, it's a bio fertilizer. It's not a anhydrous ammonia or any of those highly hazardous materials. It's a different approach.
Yeah, what's great about BW Fusion is that we don't have a ton of the nasties in our fertilizer. We market our products that have microorganisms in them. So they aren't like, you know, they're not flammable, they're not combustible. And a lot of our other,
they're not even in the corrosive or in the other health hazard side either.
No, they're not. And that was actually the local fire department. That's what their questions were. We don't have any combustible dust. So like dry products, we don't have any classified that way. And our liquids, you know, like you had presented, they're not flammable, combustible. We're the alternative.
So they're not flammable combustible. And they just harm the environment. I mean, it's fertilizer.
It's fertilizer. It's fertilizer with interesting proprietary components that if you were to release it into a stream would change the nature of other elements that's going on. Fertilizers are still a controlled substance under the Department of Agriculture, even the bio stimulants. Yeah.
Obviously,
It's more of a, we don't want to kill fish or, yeah. Right.
So is that what the recommended thing is for this different style of fertilizer? Is just a let it burn into the atmosphere and not worry about it?
And again, what we have is, so what'll end up happening is they're stored in the plastic jugs. They're basically the same kind of jugs that you see the, herbicides and pesticides. Yeah, yeah. So those jugs are flammable, so we can't classify it as a non-combustible occupancy. They would break when they caught on fire and we would release liquids that would, help keep the fire from growing. What we're trying to avoid is when you do the calculations and you put all the sprinkler water on it, the amount of water that you have to flow. And the containment, the Department of the state chemist, they don't trust the containment because the containment always gets overrun. So if you have a fire department that comes in and you've got the containment, but then you put another 50,000 gallons on it, it gets washed into the system. So we're working with the state chemist to try to figure out how we address this. We're just not there yet to come up with a better way. As far as having this material stored into a building, this is about as mundane as you would get. But technically is a combustible commodity.
So that is the action plan if the fire department comes to not put water on this at all? Just let the metal building melt.
And that's a
Self-vent, yeah.
regular fertilizer. Burn, rather than create more of a mess or dumping stuff on it and then create it to burn hotter.
So the fire department would be there to prevent spreading.
Correct.
Protect exposures.
Yeah.
The big single plant.
But I want to make sure
Like
that.
big zinc plant.
So that's why it's just based off of a sprinkler, right, egress distance.
So on this the first ones, it's small enough that it doesn't matter, the first buildings. On the second warehouse that they're building, everything will be evaluated on the drawings as a non-sprinklered facility as far as travel distances and whatnot. So it will make a difference when the building goes to 100,000 square foot. At the 37,500, we're not in violation of any non-sprinklered. Except for the allowable area.
You have it to notify the employees if something goes wrong?
Yeah.
So is there a system, are they putting in some type of system for the employee to be notified, hey, we got an issue in the west side of the building?
No, we don't have a fire alarm system in the building. But it's a relatively open space and it's a relatively small, this isn't like an Amazon warehouse. I think the original building is 4 to 5 employees. And then with the addition up to maybe 15.
They were looking at. They were talking about. For the structures, right?
Would you want like pull stations and exits so that?
Yeah, if you could get out, so the attached drawing is 250 by 250. Building, right? And then.
So 62,500 on the building that's not part of this, 37,500 on the A building, and then I think the B building that's off there by itself is 18,000 square feet. $12,800, sorry. And the B building that's freestanding. And that's mostly, that's just that's a tank room, blending room.
You have separate, like, you just mentioned a room. Do you have like different rooms or different areas of the building that have more exposure to this biochemical getting mixed with water and less exposure? Like if there's just like, it looks like there's like a loading dock on the, I don't know which cardinal direction.
The south side.
So the loading dock on the south side, I would assume that the rooms adjacent to that loading dock would be primarily, dry storage within these plastic.
You mean as far, so
Like there'd be like a processing area. I guess
there's a mixing area, there's a packaging area, then there's a storage area and a loading area.
treating all those areas as susceptible to mixing with the fertilizer.
The water mixing with the fertilizer isn't the problem. We don't have a chemical reaction issue in this one. What we have is just a flooding issue. And if we put the sprinkler system in, if the sprinkler system goes off, then there's the possibility of flooding, and the fire hazard presented by the material is not significant. The life safety, what you're talking about for the fire alarm system is something we hadn't talked about. I would say that what we could I wouldn't add that at this point for the smaller building, because it's only the 37,500 square foot. So what this variance is for, but we could look at it for their next phase to take that through the building when they build it, then to just have some sort of emergency alert system, fire alarm system. Right, on the small 34,000, it'd be 4 to 5.
We're still talking fire poles, right, and fire extinguishers, at least, or entrance yet.
Well, they have the fire extinguishers just for the nature of the occupancy. The pull stations, fire alarm system would just be pull stations with the visual and audible notification devices that.
And that will be part of the.
Not right now.
Not right now, not for this small building.
Yeah.
But if that's a requirement to go bigger, then we could back that into the building. This is for building A and B.
I'm waiting on Mr. Murray there.
So are there areas for their secondary containment then?
Yeah, the secondary containment is built into the building for if you have a product spill. Their first set of plans there that show that it's a curbed and tapered floor to contain it within the building. And that has the additional requirements of the Department of Agriculture or the Office of a Chemist in Indiana.
State chemist
Office of the
and
State
seed commission.
and Seed Commissioner.
Yes.
Okay. He's really scary smart, actually. So.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
You'll appreciate that, like, you thought, because I have the fire protection and the chemistry, organic chemistry, that like we could talk on the same level. Nope.
Life safety in here and those sprinklers, that there are spaces that are contained, i.e. the offices, showers, things of that nature, where they're in there doing things where they may not hear commotion. There's no notification for them to egress out of the building. That's the concern I have. It's not just one open space building where you can just see, there's gonna be people in there that may not hear that. So that's why I'm bringing up the life safety issue of having pools and alarms and strobes.
Yeah, if the other part's gonna be going almost right away, why not just start now and build it into this one?
Linda?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my questions are pointed to the fact that it seems like the code allows you to not put sprinklers into certain rooms based on this concern. And it does. As long as you provide this building with sprinklers.
Yeah. The only thing that the code allows is if it's reactive. So if we had an oxidizer or something where the application of water might actually cause an explosion or make the hazard worse.
My reading of it seems as though there are exempt locations where you can you are allowed to not put the sprinklers for a certain undesirable nature of the contents. This is the phrase they use.
I think that, Craig, are you? I think that the way that the state enforces that is that we don't just get to decide we don't want to sprinkler it. aside from having a hazardous reaction in that section of the code for sprinkler emissions. So just because the state chemist says that they don't want water on it, doesn't meet the requirements of that section of the code.
So then could you install install a sprinkler system on the building and then bring a variance to us for just the areas of the building that you don't want to install the sprinklers?
No. And what I was gonna ask is, are you okay with adding the fire alarm system? So it would be pull stations at the exit doors and the horns and strobes to notify.
I would have to present that to our leadership team, but I don't see a problem in it. But yeah, I mean, we would have to present that to the owner. But
There's a budget
I'm not-
cost savings for not having the sprinkler system that could be applied to that.
Plus, I think, it's, the big building, it's just kind of just being proactive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the fact that you can do a sprinkler system to have some type of protection for some of the occupants, in the structure, I mean, something there, but. You know, and for me, fertilizer is something that's gonna readily burn in most instances.
Right.
In most instances, this is something that I don't know that she's talking about, that she's saying it's not gonna burn. But then, so what's the point? If it's not gonna burn. And.
But if the packaging catches on fire, then.
Well, yeah, I understand that'll burn, but that's the packaging, and we deal with ESFR sprinklers and all those plastic, both places where it's a plastic that burns. That's why you put that type of sprinkler system, right? I'm just trying to get my head wrapped.
It's the combination of, it's the scenario that the plastic burns, the product is released, and then the product does the harm by getting outside the building and then.
Well, that's why you have protection built into the building so that.
And you've got that.
Doesn't leave your building.
Well, the product itself wouldn't, but when you start applying all of your water onto it, because the plastic's on fire.
The amount of water that will come down on it there.
Yeah.
Potentially is nothing up on that.
Depending how long it takes for them to respond, if that sprinkler's going.
And this has been an issue with our fertilizer, with our pesticides and our herbicides with the state chemist's office. Most of those has been small. Now we're doing this point of delivery. So this is like with the FBN that we were here for, those all used to be stored in a big warehouse somewhere, or they were point of sale shipping. And now we're doing these localized because the farmers need it right away. So you get it to the location. So we're building these and spreading them out all over the place instead of having one big bipole, fertilizer plant where it takes up 500 acres. So these point of sale and small startup on a bioserve. So we don't want to put the sprinkler system in because we agree with the fact that it's a lower fire hazard, it's a smaller building. But if the requirement is to put the fire alarm system in for somebody, if there is a fire, to pull the pull station.
Stipulate that we're gonna let the building burn, but we want to make sure that people can get out.
That's the bottom
At that point, the 5 people.
You said this was originally
Pull the alarm.
with sprinklers.
Take it out. Take it out.
It was originally filed with the state as a sprinkler system.
I don't think they're costly.
It's
They get stressed about it, they're getting rid of the
Here's
sprinkler
what I
system.
think, what my concern is and why pushing it back to the farther one is right now we have supply issues. The demand for this as we come up to planting season, the schedule, Minda?
Yeah.
Is pushing forward quickly. So we
Very
don't want
quickly.
this to be. Yeah, well, I'm concerned that if we say we put it in this phase, that we get it in and opened and going. As opposed to as we get the order going for the next phase of the project, that we can get it all up and running.
Those would give some amount of time to put it in.
Where is this facility in construction? It hasn't started.
We broke ground, foundation release and the. I haven't talked to FBI buildings recently.
That's correct. I think they're pouring concrete and that's as much as progress as we've gotten so far.
So if you have building, will come and go up in, you know,
Days.
5 days.
The process part that's gonna take time to. Again, you don't have a lot of doors and you don't have a lot of area.
No, it's more a matter of getting somebody on board and getting the equipment in and I don't even honestly know. I mean, every time I think we're okay, then I have a project that's held up. Can we table this until? And I can talk with her and we can go over the costing and pricing and see if we can get a firm decision, so I don't have to table the whole variance until next month. I think I have the last one.
Yeah, we can do this. We can wait to take action until the end of the variances and we'll just move on to the next one. Ready the next one?
I know. I thought you were gonna vote on it or something.
Well, no, if we vote on it, then we've taken action. Then we have to unvote. Yeah, we have to undo it and all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. Good
I'm
discussion.
excusing myself from all that District of Latimer stuff.
Okay. So we're looking at 230132, the district at Latimer Square, Building 2, Bloomington. And I imagine, depending on what Mr. Curtis tells us, we'll probably be looking at building 3, 4, 5, and 6 as well.
It's all the same code issue. Ralph Curtis Consultants. This is a series of 5 new apartment buildings being built on a site. They're 4 stories. The code issue deals with the corridor air supply and the fact that we do not have a smoke damper at the ceiling outlets.
Oh, wait, once Bobby is out of the room.
I was gonna say, where did he go?
There he is. Hey, before you go much further, I just,
Okay,
to avoid going backwards.
well, it's my understanding we are in agreements, but anyways.
I'm just gonna take long to finish the last one up.
We're moving on.
We're trying.
As I stated, the variance has to do with the fact that we don't have a smoke damper at the ceiling outlets. The other month, the commission gave me the option of corridor smoke detectors tied to the fans or adding 2 smoke dampers, fire smoke dampers at the fans. I chose the smoke dampers. The owner disagreed with my selection. He wanted the corridor smoke, so I had to refile the variances. And where we're at today is we're proposing the corridor smoke detectors tied to the fans, and we're adding 4 fire smoke dampers, 1 on each floor. And I understand the GC and the owner has talked with the local building official, and he's in concurrence with this.
Sorry to hold it up. Bobby LaRue, Monroe County Building Department. I believe the smoke corridors are also going to sound the building fire alarm. And this shuts down the fans on the supply side and closes all the returns with the smoke dampers. We feel like this is the best solution.
I feel like those were conditions that we put on last month, so.
Yeah, we agree to that. And I don't know if it saves time, but I think there's what, 4 more, 5 more?
We're doing all 5.
Perfect, thanks.
Rules of government, man, they are moving.
I love it.
Make a motion to approve 2101, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Second.
We have a motion and a second for all of those. We'll vote all together. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's all right. Well, they won't all.
I know.
Chance to come back. All right, next up, 230137, the barn, A, B, and C, Peru.
See, move it.
Hello, I'm Dan Kaiser, Cornerstone Design here representing the owner. They have an existing facility that they've been using for their ag business that they want to now convert to an A occupancy. So that's the major reason for the request.
So on your chapter 33, you restricted the square footage and everything to that one portion of the building marked existing sales barn, 4,775 square.
Correct.
But it's not separated from the rest of the.
It is in that we're doing the one new firewall, otherwise, and then we have the existing service building, which I guess is the second, is another item where, because they're not 5 feet apart, we need to have 1 hour construction. It's not 1 hour construction. So again, I guess that's a variance we're asking for, is that you know, we put a fire rated door in there, which the current door 6 is not a fire rated door.
That's one of the variants.
That's one of the variance requests. Yes, it's not a listed tested fire rating on that existing wall.
This is all on the same property, right?
Yes.
So I was curious why the staff comment said, X-year-old will be 1 hour fire rate less than 5 feet from the property line. I mean, is that because, why are we talking about property lines in the staff comments?
Yeah, it's a large area that they own.
What's the distance to State Road 19? Is that possibly what we're looking at?
I think they're looking at that wall, that double wall between the two portions of the, or two buildings, basically. One was built right up against the other one. So I'm sure, so they're structurally independent, but they're immediately against each other. So I think by code, there should be a 2 hour firewall if you want to consider them two buildings. So I'm not sure why we're talking about property lines to 1 hour walls.
The intent is to use the sales barn as the event space.
Right. The sales barn is the intent to use that as the event area. And to kind of separate it from the other existing facilities.
Going to enforce no alcoholic beverages permitted on site?
Yes, correct. That is their policy. The owner is here if you want him to address the questions.
What's the contract?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure if you don't change. Is there an opportunity, you're converting that double door at the south side of the sales barn to,
Right. So that we're separating it from the existing greenhouse.
is the swing gonna change so that it's gonna swing?
No, we don't want to exit from the sales area or the event area. We don't want to exit into the greenhouse. That is just exit from the greenhouse, or for them to bring product from the greenhouse into the.
Not gonna be an exit.
No, that is not an exit door.
So you have two exit doors.
Correct.
Outside the, exit door label with the label 9 and 8. That
Yes.
exit in the patio area,
Yes.
is there existing structures there that are gonna be removed or?
No, there's not right in front of that door. No, that's open area. Existing patio area is open area.
What's in the existing service building?
That is, where they, it's their kind of their shipping and receiving. It's where they receive their potting soil and their containers.
That door going to be marked as not an exit.
Can be. It's not, doesn't have an exit sign over it, but yes, we can mark it as not an exit.
So is the 285 people on your code summary, is that for the entire facility or is that just for the sale?
That's just for this, for the event area.
So the only exits that you're gonna use is the one that's going to the existing patio?
No, they're changing the floors south.
And then we got the covered entry.
The existing service building door off. So people can't egress through there, correct?
Right. We'll put a fire door on that.
Greenhouse, those doors will be sealed off when you have an event.
Yes. We have the front main doors, which are to the northwest, going to the covered entry, and then we have the side door that goes out into the existing patio area. Those are, they're on a motion detector, automatic slide opens, but you hit them, they have the panic to just push open.
Patio, but there's some kind of shed there.
Yeah, there's some sort of shed that's.
Oh, outside that existing patio?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
It looks like there's a trellis over that door and then there's like
There's some columns outside the existing sales area. There's entry where they go back into that side existing sales area. But Marlon, can you tell me? I'll get Marlon Carpenter, the owner, up here to verify it. They're asking about is
Marlon Carpenter, owner. I didn't hear the.
what they're asking about is there structure out here
What is this
in the patio that's in front of this door?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that is, there are columns, it's a roof, just a covered roof.
It's like a wall.
It's like a canopy type? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a cover.
So it's covering the patio,
Yes.
but it's open on all four sides.
Yes, it itself is, but then that goes right up to the existing sales area that goes off to the back. Yeah.
Okay.
3 times about.
Okay, yeah, on the plans we're looking at, we see the sales barn, we see the greenhouse, and it just says existing patio. There's no structure there on the plan, so we're trying to figure out if it's still there or what the status is.
Structural report looks okay, Joe?
Yeah. I'll look at it again, but I remember it being fine.
And the 2-year variance for the toilets, that's just to see how the facility does before you.
Again, that's just to give them time. There are 2 existing restrooms in the existing greenhouse, but that gives them time to do the planning and construction for a facility that'll have the larger restrooms for the entertainment venue.
So they do have a septic system already for the existing restrooms.
Yes.
So it's just a matter
Yeah, that's already been approved and.
of catered.
Pardon?
Everything is catered.
Oh, you're vendor catered.
Yeah. No cooking facilities on.
I'll make a motion to approve A, B, and C as submitted.
Second. All right, we have a motion second. All in favor, signify with aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
230138, Giudice Clayton. We have somebody online here for 230138 Giudice and Clayton. They don't pronounce it.
It's Christina.
I think that was Christina.
Ed, do you know where Christina went?
Oh, is that hers?
Yeah.
We just push it.
Listen, just move on to the next one.
Sounds like she's like go out there.
Mhm. They're telling me to push it and move on to the next one.
You gave me homework.
Okay to push it, is that what you're saying?
Can you push it?
Sure. Too easy. 230139 Founders Square Senior Apartments Speedway. Come on down.
I'm Mark Fraser with Architectural Investments. And I believe everything's outlined in there, but Founder Square is a single structure, 3-story, low-income senior apartment building. I believe it was submitted, and prior to my involvement on the project, it was submitted and approved by DHS with the documents indicating 5B and 13R for residential. It does have a small lobby and amenities, gym, leasing office, and a small commercial area, so that are separated. The issue comes down to the designation. It was recognized later in that process. Construction started in June or July, site work, and it got into that process. It was recognized that it technically it was using the allowable area increase that would require a full-fledged 13 system. It's been submitted as a 13R. That's been the plan and the budget, and it's kind of presenting a big challenge to the project. The owner ideally would like to provide a full NFPA 13 in the commercial areas and NFPA 13R in the residential areas. There are some areas where the building exceeds the code in terms of having 1-hour separations everywhere, where a half-hour was required between units and at corridors. It is essentially 5B. It is labeled as 5B construction, but it's approaching virtually a 5A construction because of those 1-hour ratings. It was submitted in the design as a 5B. There are it's a total of 3 floors maximum. There are 3 stairs, which have 3-hour masonry firewalls protecting them. They're equally spaced, keeping those distances short. On the upper 2 floors, there's 11 units on one side, 9 units on the other, so 20 units on each floor. There are no attic spaces, so the crux of this issue really does come down to the burden, I think, of the interstitial spaces. There are floor truss and a roof ceiling assembly. And there's 24 inches deep, and those are the only interstitial spaces on the building. And I guess that's it if you have.
So my first question, because you're noting financial hardship, you're noting significant cost increase going from 13R to 13, but I'm not seeing those numbers. What is the actual cost increase?
You've been given an estimate of about 180,000.
What's the overall cost of the project? Roughly a $10 million project.
I think it's roughly 10 million. I don't have those. They've, for the foundations, for the slab, I think they're working on the elevator pit. The framing is, gonna be starting within a few weeks, I believe.
So we wouldn't be, they wouldn't be retrofitting or.
Yeah, cost.
Yeah. It was classified that way. I didn't work on it. I know that we often do classify them as 5B. It's wood construction. It is largely protected, but it is classified as 5B.
10%. Million. Just answer that. Visual cost.
I don't think the exterior walls,
I'm going with that.
everything is called out.
Coffee.
And this building is 100% low income?
Yes. Yeah, it's an LIGC.
That 20, 30, 50% median income, or I mean, what is the?
She's under
So it's a 9% deal.
It doesn't seem like it would be that hard to get this thing to a 5A, does it?
We did look at that bid in 5A.
Below the threshold for what we usually consider to be a financial hardship.
But I do want to throw in here that this is low income housing, which is kind of you would ask the administration, is a big push in Indiana right now. Is there anything we're doing to impede the creation of low income housing in a building that has a 13R system?
It's gonna kill the project?
Okay.
You already got 5/8 type X on all the walls, ceilings are probably gonna need channels or something, and maybe C instead of X.
So. Yeah, so this fire gets into the interstitial space. This is about as safe as we can build this.
I'm not making any motion. I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page.
I just want to make sure.
And then I agree with what you're saying.
Understand that this is not a typical developer building to make a bunch of money off of a bunch of market rate rent.
And we actually did not get an official number. We were told they got to about 150, 160,000 and they stopped counting. They were expecting it was gonna go close to 200, so 180 to 200.
My concern is just the precedent that we set by allowing a 13R to get that 300% increase over a 13.
I honestly don't care about the and occupant is the occupants need to be safe, whether it's
Right.
low income or it's market rate.
Absolutely.
Passing through those areas, it can spread pretty fast. The hardship you're pushing forward is 20,000, you're saying the project budget is 10 million. I mean, in the whole scheme of things, I understand it's a cost, but the percentage of hardship, that's very low. Very low.
And my understanding is that it would be largely very safe for the residents in terms of escape. The 13R provides that protection. The 13 protects the building, ultimately protects the structure from going away completely.
That people, maybe it's people that are disabled, things like that, they couldn't get out in the.
Right.
Fire spreads faster than what we want.
Right. Yeah.
Heck, they even got CMU stairs.
One suggestion that came up after we had submitted the variance is that they would be able to potentially build it with a 13R, the full suppression throughout all of the spaces, 13R, but upgrade that to the flow and volume calculations for a full-fledged NFPA 13. So those areas are protected with NFPA 13. Just basically the difference would be that we have no interstitial spaces.
Say we've had variances like that proposed where they kind of call it like an enhanced 13R. Thoughts? Concerns?
Without diving deep into these plans, how are you separating between apartments and draft stopping and things like that in the interstitial spaces? Is that occurring at each apartment, or is that occurring at every three based on the area?
I believe there's a 1 hour separation between each apartments horizontally and vertically. I believe that continues up, and then at the corridors, there's draft stopping in the interstitial space.
Yeah, they got a 5/8 skip draft stop down the corridor. They got 5/8 skip draft stop between units.
Really containing this to, if there is an outbreak and it gets in the interstitial, or even giving ourselves 20 minutes between apartment to apartment potentially.
Threshold for, you're saying that this is over the bottom threshold to use for financial hardship.
Yeah, so there's the general rule of thumb is 10% of the overall project cost. It's not a hard, fast, policy, but historically to kind of gauge, is this a financial hardship or not? The commission's looked into about 10% of the overall project cost, which we're well under.
Yeah. I mean, changing it from a 5/8 5B to 5A, that changes your square footage, right?
The allowable square footage. We did run that through, and that we can also go that route. It would also require the addition of a firewall, which is also very costly at this point. And
right,
But cheaper to do the sprinkler.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the firewall thing.
Not yet.
But still, I mean, this thing's like an inch away from being a 5A already. I mean, why not just take it there? And then do your enhanced 13R, whatever it is you want to do.
What's left to do to get it to a 5A?
What?
What's left to do to get it to a 5A? Is that?
I'm struggling to find anything, other than maybe the jip on the ceiling needs to be C instead of X.
Let's make a motion for a 5A with the. Where it goes.
Where are you saying you need to put the firewall in? if you go by that.
We'd have to look at it, there's one potential spot. But the problem is that still didn't, that yet, I mean, that,
Yeah,
I haven't looked at the rough assembly, just floors mostly.
I mean, I do believe, yeah, the 5, we could potentially reclassify it as 5A, but we would have to resubmit drawings, that indicate that to, since it was approved a year ago. Just both Speedway and HS.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve as a 5B with enhanced protection.
And what is enhanced?
So the flow rate would be of a 13 system, but not in the interstitial spaces.
Yeah, but the installation will
Coverage will be the
13
same.
hours.
13.
Coverage in the occupied space would be.
So it'd still be a 13R.
It's coverage required by 13R, but flow of a 13, correct?
Right.
That would be done.
Yes, our fire protection, he confirmed that, yeah, they could provide the flow and the volume calculations based on NFPA 13. That would be a very acceptable hybrid that they could.
You say, what's cost on that, do you figure?
He's roughly $10,000.
Okay.
You need a second.
I believe so.
I'll second. Motion if you need.
Has you got the conditions for us?
All I got was approved as a 5A with enhanced flow rate. 5B.
B is in Bravo.
5B with enhanced flow rate, correct? Okay. Anything else?
As long as we think that's enough notation for understanding what it is, what we're talking about.
It's 13 or 13B.
And you could say flow and flow per full NFPA standards. NFPA 13 without the R. Right.
Flow per NFPA 13.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor, signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jenny, you ready?
There was like 7.
Yeah, well, nothing else to go. Keep moving.
Which one are we doing?
We are on 230138 Giadis Layton.
Maybe this one's pretty simple and quick. We've gotten this variance before. Giadis facility is a general storage warehouse. They'd like to take on another client for distribution, which would be Dr. Scholl's. Dr. Scholl's sells 1B liquids and oxidizers in 0.33 ounces to 1.5 ounces. They would be packaged for distribution to retail establishments in consumer packaging, packed on crates. There's a lot of these little bottles, up to 350 pallets, and we want to store them in the general storage warehouse. Currently under the 2014 Indiana Fire Code and Building Code, we're limited to a maximal amount of Class 1B liquids of 240 gallons before we become a hazardous occupancy and have to contain those separately. In a retail store, like a Meijer or a Walmart, we can have up to 15,000 gallons stored within the general storage, not prepackaged and without any special suppression systems. In this case, they're going to use the 2018 and 2021 also includes the requirements where they've modified this in NFPA 30 to allow for small flammable liquids up to 15,000 gallons to be stored in general purpose warehouses with the special suppression system. And we're making those modifications to the sprinkler system within the warehouse for the areas that these products will be stored to meet the requirements of that. The guidance for the sprinkler design is per FM data sheet 7-29 to allow that. So it's just kind of it's a conflict, and I don't think they've been trying to change it for years in the building codes and fire codes. It's just a tough one to tackle. NFPA 30 handled it, so we're okay by the NFPA 30 requirements. We're just not allowed to do this in the building code. And as these general warehouses progress, Probably most of them have it stored this way. This one is actually taking on a specific client and addressing it. So hopefully, that's enough to approve this variance, given that we're moving in that direction and we do have a national standards that have a design that's been approved. And all of our little, there's a sheet in there that has all of the breakdown of the product. And we did the math to add it all up, and all of those little 0.33, we do come up with 10,579 gallons of 1B liquid and 740 gallons of an oxidizer in those little tiny Dr. Scholl packages.
So we need to limit to a certain number of pallets. You said up to 250 pallets is what they asked for.
We're saying that we're going to comply with the NFPA 30, 2018 edition. I prefer to leave it that way just because that's a hard thing for them to calculate. Okay. The contract is for 350 pallets, but like if that goes up, we could still go up 100% and be okay.
Motion to approve 230138.
We have something that says that you're only storing these in that area, so if they do go up and the sprinkler system is adjusted for that area, they won't start storing this in other places in this facility. Because you said you're gonna adjust the sprinkler system for this flammable hazard at this area, correct?
Yeah, I caution when we try to add enforcement criteria. I mean, this is the, at the SR 39 at 70 Warehouse District. So the fire department there, we've been working with them in the Hendricks County Building Department to address it. The enforcement in those heavily warehouse district areas, they really know what they're looking for, and the compliance is really on the owner. I don't know how we add that to a variance without adding that to every variance. Is we have to comply with the variance, which means we have to store it in there.
Adjusting the sprinkler system to allow this.
Yeah, but from a logistics standpoint, that's more taken care of now than it ever has been in the past because those pallets are directed to go to that area. I don't know how we put that, unless you have a way to suggest to put that in the variance application that they have to comply with the variance and store the product where it's required to be stored.
Well, I just wanted to clarify too, because on the first page, the requested code modification is to comply with NFPA 30, 2018 and 2021 editions, as well as FM Global Property Loss Prevention Data Sheet 729.
Okay.
So
no matter where they store, they have to.
Yeah, they're putting that, but with NFPA 30, are we doing 2018 or 2021?
It's the same in both. If
Okay.
you wanted to use 2021,
I haven't read that today, so.
that's a bad choice on my language. Yeah.
Okay, so those are the same, the standards are the same.
Yes.
Yeah, you said.
Yeah, so we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All right. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Every other one.
I'm good.
You good for a minute? All right. 230140 A, B, C, D, and E, Stellantis, Samsung, SDI Battery Cell Building 1, Kokomo.
41 is for the same thing, different building.
Okay, all right, so we'll hear 40 and 41 since they're the same.
Shelley Unclear, or Shelley Yeager with Albert Hunt Associates.
Andrew Zarowski with the HCCC, the design builder.
So our Stellantis Samsung battery facility is a new campus, manufacturing campus, composed of 20 buildings. The two main ones we're here to talk about today. We've got our battery cell manufacturing facility and then the formation facility adjacent to that. Our battery cell building is composed of two parts. There's a mixing component that's got a 3-story area, over 300,000 square foot for that portion of the building. We've got F1 occupancy. We've got H3 occupancy in some areas in that facility. It is separated from the rest of the battery cell facility with a firewall. The rest of the battery cell facility is over 1 million square feet. Almost 1.5 million if you count the equipment platforms. And that is a 1-story function. I'm going to talk about these two variances together because both of these variances were coming here for 5 in each building, but they're the same variances essentially for the 2 buildings. So the formation building, which is adjacent to this, connected through bridges, is over 1 million square feet. There are 3 stories, 2 are occupied stories, and then the 3rd is a mechanical electrical penthouse. So as I go through this, I'll look for guidance on whether we want to go through each of these 5 components individually, or if you would like me to present them all together.
Are they?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So I'll just give an overview of the 5 and then we'll get into A.
Perfect.
Okay. So our first variance is going to be for occupant load. Our second variance, B, is for travel distance. C is for our construction type and unlimited area building. D is for our termination of the top of wall for our egress passageways. And our last one is for the smoke heat venting. So for our occupant load, requirement is to calculate occupant load based on 1 occupant per unit of area in the building. We're requesting to go by an owner occupant count rather than the calculated occupant count. Our actual occupancy of this building is less than 6% of what it would be if we calculated by square footage. And the larger count would result in excessive toilet fixtures, egress widths, and mechanical systems. So we are providing toilet counts, egress widths, mechanical systems that do far exceed what our owner count is. To get into some of the numbers, for example, our mixing component of the battery cell building number 1, our owner count has 85 total occupants per shift. If we calculated that by square footage, we'd have over 3,000 occupants. The remainder of battery cell, we have 547, calculating it would be over 10,000. And similar in formation, 326 versus over 7,000. Are there any questions, or would you like me to elaborate on any of the numbers for toilet fixtures or egress widths we're providing?
So while you're doing egress widths, you're still providing exits at prescribed. I assume this is a huge footprint and.
It is a huge footprint, so our numbers exceed what our occupant load is, but they don't reach what it would be by calculation. So for example, for our egress sizing in the mixing building, by calculation, we'd only need 17 inches of door width. Code says we need 627 inches. We're providing over 400 inches.
So we're still spreading out the exits.
Yes, absolutely.
You're just not sizing it for 10,000 people, you're sizing it.
Similar with our toilet counts, where our owner occupant count would say we only need 1 male and 1 female fixture in the mixing building. The code calculator numbers gets us up to 16. In actuality, we're providing over 28 male and 7 female in that case. So we're falling kind of in between the 2 numbers, if you will.
Any other questions about that one?
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Want to be? Okay.
You're
All right. So variance request B is to do with travel distance in our building. With our F1 and S1 occupancies, travel distance is limited to 250 square feet or 250 feet with our sprinkler system. And our H3 is limited to 150 feet. So we meet those numbers in most of the facility. There are a few select locations that fall outside those numbers, the greatest of it being up to 62 feet in addition to those prescriptive numbers. And this has to do with the operation, the layout, the size of the equipment results in those greater travel distance in those few locations. So we've engaged Jensen Hughes, an expert on these matters, to perform modeling and simulations to validate, prepare a report showing that all occupants can evacuate this building before untenable conditions are reached. And we do have our reps from Jensen Hughes here today if there's any specific questions on that. And I believe part of the submission you guys received that report. Are there any specific questions?
Don't see.
All right. Okay, for variant C, this gets into our construction type and unlimited area building. As I mentioned, our first building, battery cell, we are dividing with the firewall because we have that 3-story component that we want to have separated from the rest of the 1-story component. So specifically, we're looking at this variance in that building for the remainder of that 1-story component. Requirements require that we're no more than 2 stories of building, which we meet in that portion of the building. We're fully sprinklered and we're surrounded by yards of not less than 60 feet in width. So our request is to apply the construction type 2B with unlimited area building for that portion of the building using a 3-hour firewall, separate the mixing portion from that battery cell portion. Just the function of these buildings will not allow us to separate these functions. We need to have the slurry mix that is created in that mixing building go directly into the coating equipment that is the first portion of our battery cell building. Any questions specifically on that building before I go into the formation building, which is similar but has a few additional stipulations? Nope, okay. Very good. All right, so moving over to formation building, similar approach where we would like to apply the 2B construction type to that building. And go with an unlimited area building there as well. So in this building, there are a few additional things and more than I talked about in that last one. Our overall building height does exceed the 75 feet, although our entire top story is an unoccupied penthouse area. That penthouse does exceed the limitations for the height and area of a penthouse. So for example, the code says our penthouse can't exceed 18 feet in height or a third of our area of our roof. In our case, our penthouse height is 36 to 45 feet above that roof level because of the nature of the equipment that is housed in there. And we are just under 50% of the roof area that we sit on. So here,
Anticipated occupancy of that penthouse.
0. It's unoccupied. It's mechanical equipment, electrical equipment.
So just people out there occasionally.
Exactly, that would be it. Exactly. Correct.
Does it have multiple means of egress from that penthouse?
It does, yes, but it's designed for a penthouse construction. So we do have multiple means on either end of the facility. So here we're looking to apply the type 2B construction with unlimited area building for that formation building and use 3-hour firewalls to separate the bridges which connect from the original building over to this building. And also accept the classification that our 3rd level mechanical, unoccupied mechanical electrical is a penthouse. Any questions? On to D? All right. Okay. The variance D for both buildings has to do with the termination of our egress passageway. Egress passageways are constructed with fire barriers, which by code says they go up to the floor or roof deck above. In our case, our floor roof deck above is sometimes 70 feet above our floor level. We're proposing to cap the top of our egress passageways with a horizontal assembly that gives us our rating for that enclosure. Similar to there are allowances that allow you to do that with shaft enclosures. So we'd like to apply that approach and cap the top of these rather than run them all the way to the roof above. Any questions?
So the equipment that running above these passageways that has the potential to fall onto or through into the passageway?
There is a minimal amount of crossover. Our main passageways divide our 2 dry rooms from each other. There is minimal mechanical that crosses over between the 2. There are also 2 areas where we have some process equipment that needs to cross over. So if we were to take these walls up, we would need to create a fire rated shaft way for that equipment to pass through.
Are they concerned that any of this equipment in a fire event could fall and then block the passageway?
There should be any risk of it falling, and blocking the passageway now.
When you say there's no risk of it, are you saying that the fairing is not over the corridor, for instance, like under fire or under emergency condition? It's not possible for that to long enough. Is that what you're saying? I know that in normal circumstances, like a rooftop unit normally won't fall into the building, but it
Right.
happens under fire condition.
Yeah, well, we do have, there is, like I said, there is process equipment that does cross over. So if there's concern of that, that's what I'm hearing the concern is. In this case, though, we would need that equipment to cross through the passageway. Even if these walls went all the way up, we would need to create an enclosure that allowed this process to pass through.
Just wondering, you build a rated ceiling is metal studs and drywall. Something heavy falls on that, that's not gonna stop.
Right.
And then you penetrated that.
Right. So maybe something in those areas where the equipment is, it's actually short of the control.
But if you take it to the ceiling, it's still gonna be metal studs and drywall, the same thing as you pass them through.
It's the equipment over the corridor is the issue, not the cap.
I understand, but the equipment is gonna pass through the corridor if you take it all the way up.
Right.
The same equipment is gonna pass through the corridor that still is like metal studs and drywall and has no more strength than if it's a ceiling.
And yeah, I think I understand that, and I'm okay with that. It's more so like he's mentioning that even if it does go all the way up, there's still that danger of that equipment blocking egress out under conditions, correct? Yes.
We talking pipes and stuff in them, or what are we talking about?
There's an overhead conveyor system that takes product from the loading dock on the south side of the building in one area, takes it north to that north dry room. Correct.
Let's just run that.
Okay. Okay. All right, and the last variance for both buildings is smoke and heat removal. So our proposal is to not apply the smoke and heat removal system and rather use quick response sprinklers in lieu of a early suppression fast response sprinkler system or in lieu of the smoke and heat removal systems. So in our facility, much of the facility is dry room condition, needs very, very low humidity in these spaces. And any sort of venting system, even if it's normally closed, is a leakage potential that could contaminate the process. So we want to eliminate the requirement for that smoke and heat removal system. The nature of our products, the racking systems that we have, the quick response sprinklers are more appropriate to these functions than the ESFR sprinkler system, which require different clearances, different approach to those sprinkler systems. Any specific questions on this one?
Questions on that one, but I do want to go back to the one where the JH did that analysis on egress. Because they did 6 different scenarios and there were 2 scenarios where looks like the spaces were untenable at about 30 seconds in. It notes that each of these 2 areas is populated with few occupants. How many is few?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Mark Susky with Jensen Hughes. So those areas, I think it's inside of the packet, inside of the summary where it has each individual, I think those areas were like 3 or 4 people. It was very few. And then inside of the egress analysis, what we try to do is going back to the using the owner occupied requirements instead of the prescriptive requirements. What we did is we took their numbers, we increased them by 50%. just to give us that extra safety factor. So inside of here, when you look at it, we did also take that into account to get that safety factor. And in those areas, they're very small rooms. And, people, the perceived fire, the cue of the fire would get people out of that room, almost immediately. So.
Thank you.
There's one thing to add on the item E, which has to do with the smoke and heat removal. And that is that these systems, these rooms are equipped with the cold smoke removal manually operated system, where after an event, you are able to manually turn on the system to evacuate the smoke.
So going back to C, maybe I missed something when you're talking about it, but the building would be considered type 2B constructions, not type 2B. But you want to consider it that?
We want to design it with type 2B construction.
It's 2B or is
It will be 2B. Yes. Now on, yes. Yes, it will be 2B.
One built, it'll be 2B. So what exactly is the variance? Apologize for being dense.
Well, it's a little bit varied between the two buildings. For the battery cell building, the variance is to allow the 3-hour firewall separation between the mixing component and that component in lieu of a 60-foot separation. Also at the other end where we abut the bridges.
So you stop, okay, I got you
Yeah,
now.
where we abut the bridges to the formation building, we're looking at a 3-hour firewall separation there as well. With the other building, we do have the increased height and we have the increased size of the penthouse. So that one gets into using the 2B construction, even with those heights and area of their penthouse in play.
So is this gonna be? Trying to figure it out. Yes, I thought.
No, quick response.
Instead of the yes, sir.
I understand that more recent versions of the IBC do allow that as an exception.
I just saw certain one heads though. That's one, right?
Right.
So in these areas, how many heads will be in those areas? Because it just allows like 18 heads, right?
That I can't speak to the specifics on.
In the area, new code only allows like 18 heads in those areas, right? That's what how they'll consider it.
In our mechanical system, I don't know the exact number of sprinkler heads in these areas. But I know our mechanical system is evaluating that with the fast response sprinklers. We also have sprinklers in the rack systems where we do have racks.
Have there been conversations with local fire department today?
Yes, we've given this presentation, gone through each of these variances we're seeking with the local officials, the local fire marshal.
They expressed concerns?
They did not. They did not.
They did not submit comments that I see, so I didn't know.
Any other questions, Jim?
You can just check on that quick response.
The fire code. Like some addition of the otherwise. Yes. 12 or fewer spellers. I guess I have no questions. But again, they will construct it to this, the 2018 or 2021 code, right?
Stand for any case, yes.
So they'll have to use that and use those fire response members in those areas. What was the question you might in here?
Conform to the 2021 code.
Yeah, the ordinance, conform to the 2021 code, but does quick response as they talked 2018. I have a copy in 2018, copy 14 or 21. 21 of them, it just says quick response, just computer removal should not be required in areas where there's equipment control those special apps and virtual response index and then basically quick response members are listed to control fires through commodities with lower fuel printers. This is not a ship, so we have materials. Once it complies with the code. Yeah. Do you want to attempt a motion?
That might be useful.
Go ahead. I'm not. I'm old. Lithium batteries are new to me. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around everything. We've had a number of instances, not with the construction of them, but with lithium batteries themselves. Which are. And like the little four-wheel things that run around on the interstate. Is that what you drive? But yeah, those as well, even just the lithium batteries, and made scooters and all that kind of stuff. So you just have. We had a scooter dummy of fire. You just got 500 of those on fire. And that's all you get.
I'm just gonna start with 230140. So I'll do it a little bit myself. I'll make a motion to approve.
Mark was just pointing out the in-rack sprinkler system is giving us that extra layer of protection.
I'm gonna move to approval of A, B, C, D, and E for 230140 with no additional conditions.
Gonna do 41 at the same time.
I thought we're down to that. We'll just,
Okay.
since there's multiple things under each of them. And since we're all here, it's simple, let's know how.
You don't have to vote if you want to abstain. I'm not going to. I'm just not knowledgeable enough to.
All right.
Yeah.
We're just doing the one. Yes, we're just doing 40. A, B, C, D, and E, as submitted. Is my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. to Approve as submitted. A through E. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Taz, I'm not.
Hold on. Opposed, same sign. Abstentions?
Abstain. I'm not knowledgeable enough, so I don't want to vote on something I'm not comfortable.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay, then I will make a motion for 230141, A, B, C, D, and E as submitted to be approved.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for the thorough submission too.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, you want to keep plowing through or do you want to break for lunch or something? Okay.
3 items.
Oh, I figured we could get through these plus Logan's support. All right. 230142 Founder's Point, Franklin. Do you have anyone in attendance for 230142 Founder's Point in Franklin?
Motion to table.
Motion second on table. All in favor signify with aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 230143 Classic Cleaners, Zionsville.
We're about 3/4 of the way down explaining this already.
What's that?
I think we're about 3/4 of the way there from having this explained already.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, you might know a little bit about this already, yeah. Ed Rinsink, RTM Consultants. I have with me Tim Day and Steve Arnold with Classic Cleaners. So this variant request involves pickup and drop off machines. You've got an attachment that gives a photo image of that. The only thing missing from that photo image are the bags. That'll be important here in a minute. I'll explain that. This is the issue where it was cited under the general scoping requirement in the building code for accessibility. If you pick that up from Craig's interpretation, it was an interpretation request for the broad sense of just citing the requirement that buildings and facilities have to be accessible. Very broad. The exceptions in 1103.1 are very narrow. Things like diving boards and things like that. So they definitely give you the idea that the building code is written to be more or less very inclusive for about anything you can think of. So the issue of the equipment, I'll give kind of a quick run through here and then back up with questions and things. There are 4 different methods that customers can avail themselves of services. 2 of the 4 would be things that could be done after hours or beyond the business hours of the facility. The one I'd like to focus on is the accessible lockers that are available for 24-hour customer pickup and drop off. So that would be the alternative. And just by way of explanation, in an interpretation, the building commissioner can't consider alternatives and say this or that instead of that sort of thing. So that's why this is a very different kind of consideration that we're making as part of a variance request. We're making the case here that we do provide accessible pickup, drop-off facilities for customers. I'll say a few things here about the hardship statement. We've gotten an estimate per the attached letter from Metal Progetti, which you have a copy of that. The range of cost there is $82,000 to $92,000 because it would require re-engineering of the machines and having to modify them to meet the reach range requirements. The construction cost for the tenant improvement and build out for this was $89,332. So that's the cost of the tenant build out. Again, $82,000 to $92,000 for modifying these machines. There are 6 other facilities that we know of in the North Suburban Indianapolis area that utilize the same equipment. To our knowledge, this has not ever been cited anywhere, certainly not in Indiana. So it's one of those things that's not like a restroom facility or a kitchen or a counter, a sink, those sort of things. It's one of the items that it's kind of a unique one in that sense. A late attachment that I made to the variance, it's the very last attachment. It's a link to it's not a hot link, so you have to paste it in, but there's a link to a video that illustrates how someone would use the facility. So it's set up that the entry area would be open 24/7 for customers to come in, pick up, drop off.
It's an illustration of how someone in a wheelchair would utilize the lockers and the bags and so forth for picking up and dropping off their laundry. So we do have a bona fide accommodation for the disabled.
I was curious, having watched that video, what's the difference between how an able-bodied person would do it and someone in a wheelchair? It looked to me like the same process.
It is, it's exactly the same process in terms of utilizing the lockers. Now, if somebody wanted to use the machines, that's where the difference is. So
what does the machine do?
So the machine is, you have a drop off or you have a hopper that comes down, you pull open a hopper and drop it. And so then the pickup is, it's got the carousel, is that what you call it, for that carries the clothes, and then you could actually, it's like a dispensing machine, basically, you'd put your number in there and it would find your clothes and you'd be able to reach in and take them out.
But that would be something only enabled by.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because of the way these machines are made, they don't meet the reach range requirements for someone in a wheelchair.
I did notice in the combination lock was kind of, I mean, is there any type of different lock or handle for pulling over that might?
We did get cited. There are a few other things that got cited in the write-up from the town of Zionsville. One of them was the opening device for the locker. So they had to change those. You changed those out.
Yes,
right.
yes.
So it would be similar to like, a thumb turn type thing where you can get the ones with the elongated paddles, so you don't have to do a twisting thing, just, so that was,
accessible type of lock.
Yes.
Understand the drop off, you get the bag, you put it in the locker, and you're good. How does the pickup work?
Well, it'd be the same thing where that's put in your locker for you, so you would just go pick it up.
You have to call ahead and say, put my stuff in this locker. I'm on this way.
Automated, is it? Tim, you
Well,
want to explain that?
On that part, we've done that since 2004, lockers. And it is a manual assignment process. So you just need to let us know if you want access from a locker storage. We've got it at, 15 locations.
15 locations.
And,
So when you're down the form you fill out, you say, I want it back in a locker.
Yeah, right. You can call ahead. You'll get a text showing you where to go. So this is your locker number. Your code typically is the last 4 digits of your phone number.
In the video, the young lady drops them off and then she looked at a text and opened up the next locker to grab.
She didn't go to the kiosk and you don't.
Right, she went to a text or something on the phone and then put in a combination code and it took the next locker.
Yeah, so just what you're saying, if I'm a customer who's driving around and remembers, oh gee, I have dry cleaning, I can go to the kiosk, put in my number, and my clothes will be delivered instantly.
Yeah.
If I'm a person who has a disability, I have to call ahead in order to have my stuff in a locker.
Or make the arrangements at drop off. There's some folks on the locker system that are 100% after hours pickup. So their clothes automatically go into the lockers. It's a field we can set.
I'm gonna say ahead of time, when you fill out the form, if you say you want it in a locker, as soon as it's done, it'll be in that locker. Right? So you can pick it up just as quick as the other way.
I would like to also mention that for the disabled folks, we do home delivery, and frankly, we do a lot of nursing home type work. There's a laundry list of those where they don't have to come access us. We service them. And at this particular location in question, there's a drive-through. So on attended hours, we'll come right to the car.
I don't think anybody's arguing business hours. It's that 24-hour pickup that is accessible for some folks and not others.
But it sounds like the timing doesn't change. I mean, as soon as your clothes are done, if you're able-bodied, it can be on the rack or in the locker. As soon as they're done, if you're disabled, they're gonna be in the locker. So it's not like it delays you if you're disabled. It's just a different place.
It only delays you if you didn't think to check, put my stuff in a locker and you want to go after hours and pick it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'd have to know that that's what you need to do, but
That could
then
be
if you
foreplay.
dropped in the locker instead of in the bin, in the hamper, whatever you call it. It seemed like you.
May I say on that topic, it depends on the type item. If it's a bagged item, for instance, you want folded shirts or sweaters or household items, you're still going in a locker regardless. There's no way to run them on the system.
Okay, yeah, it looks like the machine only has hanger items.
Correct.
How many different facets of this machine are inaccessible or are above that reach range? Like, is it just where you're lifting it off the rack or is it the touch screen? Is it the?
The hopper's high.
Okay.
It's beyond, although when we shot the video you just watched, that person actually went over and ran through the system. We can share that with you if you want. But that and the screen that they push, which if they're using the lockers, they don't have to use the screen, and then the lift out.
They understand that our approval does not prohibit somebody from filing a lawsuit for the DOJ.
That's possible. So far, that's never happened. There's a couple hundred of
You
these.
just want to make sure that it's
throughout the
clear.
United States.
It's clear, right? There's a variance from the accessibility standards of the Indiana Building Code, not from the, yes, American with Disabilities Act.
I would also comment, these are a global sold system. They're used all over the world.
But it is the Americans with Disabilities Act.
I understand. that.
It only takes one person. Go to all your stores.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those people are out there. Ask all the
Yeah.
hotels.
They're looking for hotels and people with deeper pockets, probably.
On the same page. So we have a motion. Yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval as submitted. My gosh. Coffee. All in favor of approval, signify with aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye.
Thank you very much.
Motion carries.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We
230144, C3 Restaurant and Bar, Bloomington.
Ed Rensink, RTM Consultants. This variance request involves a build out of a patio, covered patio structure at the front of a existing restaurant. It's on a multi plot site and maybe just might be a little confusing at first glance, but if you look at the attachment that I have that has the plat exhibit and plan view, the plat exhibit is rotated north is to the right on that plat exhibit and north is up on the plan view. So that's why when I say the front in the plat exhibit, it's front is facing to the left, and then of course in the plan view, it's facing down. So this was a same owner, but they platted this all separately, probably for financing purposes. So the lot line that we're talking about here is really just an interior lot line within this development that opens to a common area. That common area can't be built on, practically speaking, because it's the access to all of the other shops here, retail shop, and I believe there's a coffee shop and some, and then this restaurant. So we need a variance from section 705 to permit the location on property for this construction for the canopy roof. We do have fixed, in this case, since the buildings are all there, we have a fixed known exposure. We've got 11.6 feet to the property to the east, to the lot line, actually. It wouldn't be the building is set back further than that. So we don't have an issue in that direction. The 11.6 feet, which is actually the closer distance. It's significantly more than that to the property that's to the south for plot 207. We have over 60 feet of separation in that case from where we're proposing this construction. So the building is sprinklered. We will extend sprinklers as required to the outdoor covered patio space. So based on the actual distance to adjacent properties and sprinkler protection, we argue this isn't adverse to safety.
Yeah.
I agree with Monroe County Building Department. As Ed said, that this awning is overhanging like a commonly used court for all of the buildings. And disrupting that commonly used court disrupts the functionality of all of the other buildings. So I don't see how they can really come in and do something here that would be problematic. So the building department is fine, and as far as I know, the Bloomington Fire Department is fine with the proposal as well.
So it's gonna be Friday.
Sorry.
Are they gonna be Friday, go on this morning, or how they gonna?
This exterior sprinklers, they might be able to do this with dry sidewall sprinklers probably, because the distance isn't so much. So I think it's gonna be I'm not certain of that. I don't think it has, let me see here. I don't think it's designed with any concealed spaces, so I imagine they can do it all with dry sidewall sprinklers because that distance isn't that great. It looks like about 16 feet of throw there, which you can cover that with an extended sidewall.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like there's a gentleman in chat, Tim Hansen, who has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Tim Hansen. I'm the petitioner. And yeah, I just wanted to clarify what Ed was saying. We've had Frontier out and they're comfortable reaching the covered areas with sidewall sprinklers.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners' questions, concerns? Motion?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve is submitted. All in favor, signify with aye. Same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll roll through the,
Make this easy.
230131 BW Fusion Logan support.
Thank you. They were able to review it with their in-house, and thank you for giving us the time to do that. Sometimes it just has to go through the proper pecking order. But yeah, the fire alarm system is not a problem. It would be manual pull stations at all the egress exits and the notification throughout per NFPA 72.
Motion to approve with the addition of the full station fire alarm system for NFPA 72. NFPA 72.
Got Daz?
Okay, so I've got approved on the condition of installation of a full station fire alarm per NFPA 72.
Correct. Yes, motion in a second. We got it. All right. All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Local variances.
I believe that all four of these are post-ballot indicators per Marching Park.
Make a motion to approve 110 South Delaware, 415 East 22nd, 515 East 22nd, and 2136 Central Avenue, all in Indianapolis.
So before we move forward on that, the agenda says 2136 Central Avenue. The meeting materials online say 2135 Central Avenue. But when I open the meeting materials, it's for 515 East 22nd Street. Okay, so I don't know that anyone's had a chance to review that one on Central Avenue.
Which one was that one?
The fourth one. So I'd be fine moving forward with the other three, but we should probably get the address and what documentation for the other.
Let's set this aside to not lunch.
I'm fine setting it aside till after lunch. All right. Yeah. We're gonna break for lunch. I'm back at 150.